Welcome back, Sons of Pitches. It's episode 17. We hope you had a great weekend. We had some exciting things happen this weekend. We're going to start with the Premier League, but we have some exciting news in Italy and in Portugal. We did have round one of the Nate versus Jay fixture. We'll get to that later and see who was triumphant at the weekend if you don't already know. But we'll start in England like always, where we saw one of the first games of the weekend. Brentford and Chelsea duked out 2-2. Brentford took the lead on both occasions. They did not. I lied. Sorry. Chelsea took the first lead through Jackson, despite an awful miss. Back-to-back goals for him in 2 games. And then Wissa took the lead for Brentford with an amazing bicycle kick that we all saw. And then Chelsea were able to draw level before the 90 minutes. How did you guys feel about that game?
Honestly, it was one of those classic Chelsea performances we've seen this season where they're lackluster and barely scraped a point. I think Jackson's miss looked like it was going to set up a miserable loss and a miserable away visit to the home of Brentford, but I thought he responded pretty well. I think Nicholas Jackson has shown flashes. It was nice to see him keep his head up and score the goal. It was a great cross from Malo Gusto, who I don't really like, and I've said that on past podcasts. I think he's great going forward, but he's a little suspect defensively, in my opinion, but he played a great cross in. He's really relished filling the void and filling the cleats of Reece James. There's an argument to be made of how big those cleats are to fill because he's never really healthy. But obviously on his day, he's one of England's better talents, in my opinion. But Brentford responded really well, and I think they took full advantage of a Chelsea side that has been lacking confidence, which is kind of sad because I thought after the 1-1 draw to City that it was a really positive result for Chelsea going away to the Etihad, gaining a point, being the better team for periods of that game. And then obviously that kind of all their morale kind of got lowered in the cup final, losing to Liverpool's 12-year-olds. And now here we are away from Brentford. And I think Brentford were able to take advantage of a Chelsea side that still don't really have an identity, still don't really know what to do with themselves. But Brentford were really good. I always thought Wissa was pretty underrated. It was cool to see him get the goal. And I think Brentford have a lot of solid strikers too. I wanted to say that was my takeaway from watching them play. I feel like they plug and play either in Mbeumo or Wissa and Mope and next to Tony. Maybe that speaks to Tony's quality of making the players better around him. But I thought Brentford definitely deserved a point. Probably could have deserved more. But yeah, it was a typical lackluster Chelsea performance, in my opinion.
I'm glad you mentioned Tony because I was wondering, has the hype died a little bit? He's going 3 games straight without getting a goal in the back of the net. I mean, obviously not every striker is going to score week in, week out, but has that whole coming back from his betting scandal died down a little bit, you think?
I think he just commands so much attention now, and there's the threat or the potential that he has to score goals and even create for himself. Perhaps is what opens opportunities for guys like Wissa, although Wissa took that chance all on his own. It was a great bike, but yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that was something I was interesting to me too, is Brentford are still gaining points even if Tony's not finding the score sheet. So I'm sure they're happy. They've kind of dragged themselves out of the little relegation scrap that they found themselves in when Tony was serving his suspension. But I mean, it was a positive result for Brentford.
Yeah, and it's funny too. At the weekend that they had the some award show, and he was up on stage, and then the woman up with him was like, "Oh, any bets on who won this award?" So I thought that was pretty funny. A little bit of banter on stage, and you said it was too soon, but it was a good one. Any other thoughts from J or G on this game?
Yeah,
not too much, really.
For me, it was just there's such an opportunity to throw in some real experience into this Chelsea team, and they have it with Thiago Silva on the bench. And they don't do it. And I feel like the past few games where he's kind of been out of the side, it's exactly what they're missing. Just somebody to kind of keep them level and get them going. Because there's no real leader on the team. You got Chilwell, who hasn't done too much in his career, but he also hasn't been healthy and been on the field much for Chelsea. So I mean, he's like the oldest player there. When you got Conor Gallagher, who also hasn't done much either. So I feel like having some veteran presence and some good leadership is pretty much what they're missing. And I feel like it's right there screaming at them because you got a world class player. Granted, in the latter stage of his career, but I feel like there's a lot more value with him on the field than with him on the bench.
Yeah, for me, I think that this game is. I mean, if there's ever a game that tells you identity is important in a football club, it's this. I mean, Brentford they're no world beaters. They're not a top class team in the Premier League at all. But when Chelsea go to any team that has an identity like Brentford do, and a coach who has a way of instilling his beliefs like Thomas Frank does, I think that Chelsea's always going to struggle in this type of game, and we saw that. So I think until Pochettino or whoever else is going to come in and be the coach of Chelsea can find that identity and instill that belief and that just mental strength that they don't have right now, I think that Chelsea are just going to continue to struggle and scrape away points.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because it's not like this Brentford team are flying at the moment. I think it's only 2 wins out of 7 or 8 with Tony coming back in the team, the rest being losses. So, when you're a team like Brentford that does have a little bit of identity, that's kind of what gets you these points against teams in the moments where you're not performing up to the best of your ability. With that being said, I think this Brentford squad is like kind of trash. I hate to be mean about it, but I think they make a lot of mistakes, and I think if they didn't have Thomas Frank and these players weren't all used to the system they play, I think they might find themselves still in a relegation battle. But it was definitely a much needed point off the back of 3 losses. We'll see if they can turn it into anything, but I mean, they go away to Arsenal next, and we know what they've been doing, so we'll see how it fares for them.
True, and speaking of trying to get themselves out of a relegation scrap, Everton, obviously we mentioned on the last pod that they got their sentence reduced in a manner of speak. Their point deduction went from 10 to 6, if I'm not wrong. But they didn't do themselves any favor with the game at the weekend against West Ham United. Their striker Beto missed a chance to go up before halftime in a penalty, missed the penalty. But then proceeds to score within about 10 minutes of the second half. So they looked good, cards on the table to get 3 points, but then West Ham just had a brilliant performance, especially into the 90th minute where they scored 2 to get the game back. They won 3-1. This West Ham team who, they've won 2 on the bounce now. After that, dip in form. I guess David Moyes heard Angelo talking a lot of crap about him and decided that he needed to really show what he's made of. And it looks like they have a little bit of form back. It remains to be seen how long they're going to hold it. But, Angelo, that being said, did you want to make a comment on this game?
Yeah, I think I should go first, and I'll give Moyes some credit, but I won't give him all the credit because in that poor run of form, West Ham were pretty banged up. They had players representing their nations in AFCON. They had Paquetá back for the previous game, which they won. And I think this West Ham team's finally at full strength. And, when West Ham was full strength, they were in the top 5 or 6 at the beginning of the season. A lot of people seem to forget that, maybe myself included. And I kind of turned a blind eye to why they were performing so badly. I mean, it took them until February 26th to get their first win in January, which was last match day, and they followed it up with another win away to Everton. So we'll see. I was particularly impressed with the likes of Kudus, Ward-Prowse to midfield. Paquetá, he doesn't get on the score sheet, but even himself, he's so good with the ball at his feet. He shows so much confidence, something that unfortunately he wasn't able to do at AC Milan. I do know Paquetá pretty well, and he was somebody that definitely showed flashes, but for some reason just was never fully committed in this Serie A. And once he got his move to Lyon, he kicked on. And I mean, this is a player that Man City were rumored to pay $100 million for, which blows my mind. But yeah, it was a great performance from West Ham. I don't know how much it's David Moyes is doing because, like I said, he did get some key pieces back these last couple weeks. But big result for West Ham. And a couple of teams around them in the table took losses, so I'm sure they're happy.
For me, I think if Moyes doesn't have Paquetá, he's right back in the same boat he's been in with the fans and all the drama about him, whether he should stay or whether he should go. I think they've had a lot of their pieces back for the last couple weeks now, and they've still struggled. But in the last 2 games now that Pockets has been there, it's almost a night and day difference in their ability to play, their ability to hold possession, and just make an impact on the game. I mean, Paqueta brings so much to the midfield, and when he's not there, you really see how much of a hole it is. It's just about the same hole that Declan Rice left at the beginning of the season, when they were really missing something in their midfield. Paqueta stepped up into that role, and they missed him while he was out. And I think that now that he's back, if it wasn't for him, David Moyes would really be struggling right now.
Yeah, the credit I'll give Moyes is that there's probably been 4 or 5 times in his West Ham tenure, 6 if you include the time he did get sacked, where he was on the verge of getting sacked, where people were calling for his head. They wanted him gone, and he's been able to back against the wall, put something together, and get them on a run. And I think that's really important for a team in that area of that just outside the big 6.
Definitely shows the players back the manager.
For sure, and I think they all enjoy playing for him. I mean, like, let's be honest. This team is not great. It's not the world-beating team, but they have players that can do the job. And then a couple of underrated players like Bowen, who are going crazy this season. Paqueta, Kudus, they're all playing very well. So yeah, that's why I've always kind of been a Moyes backer. I think he gets a little bit of undue criticism when the squad isn't necessarily that great. I think he gets more out of them than what they should be getting on paper. So yeah, I think it's an impressive spot to get them in 7th when they're having them in 7th still in European competitions, and still being criticized by a lot of fans and Premier League fans that he should be sacked.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because he did deliver a European trophy to them not even 12 months ago. So maybe I should be a little more lenient with him too. And they have European football coming up this week, probably by the time that we record this. I don't know if they will have played yet, but I think they have Freiburg in the Europa League, so that's not going to be an easy contest, but they have 2 great results to get the momentum going into it. So we'll see how it shakes out, but it definitely looks like there's been a turning point in West Ham's season. We'll see how far it can propel them up the Premier League table.
Yeah, and I want to quickly counter you, Jay, and I know what you mean by the quality of the squad, but if you look at that midfield 5 of Alvarez, Souček, Kudus, Ward, Prowse, and Paqueta, like, that's a solid. Like, that is extremely talented midfield.
Solid. Yeah.
It's fantastic, and like, those kinds of players, they can pass around. I mean, I'd tout them, like, obviously they're doing well in Europe. Like, I'd tout them against a lot of other midfielders across Europe. So, I mean, it's still a talented squad. And then obviously, like you said, Jared Bowen, I mean, he got a hat trick last week. So obviously every now and then he can pull one out of the hat on the weekend when you need him to score goals. And their defense, and I mean, the goalkeeper Ariola at one point had a lot of potential. I mean, I think he's still good, maybe not living up to it as much. And even some of the depth in that, I mean, Calvin Phillips obviously hasn't had the greatest since moving to Man City, but Man City still, like Pep Guardiola, one of the smartest managers in the world, thought he was good enough. They still have players like Mikel Antonio, Ogbonna, Ben Johnson, who could get, good games under their belts every now and then, Danny Ings. So the team, I think, is pretty decent, but obviously you got to put the pieces in the right place.
For me, they always had like that Declan Rice. Like, they have that player that's going to be sold on for 80 million or 100, whatever he ended up getting sold for. Like, you have Paqueta, like, he might get you maybe like a 60. Bowen, like, there's nobody there that screams like, I belong in a top 3 title fighting team. Like, I don't see anybody in that in this squad that belongs there in that category. But that's not to say they have bad players. This is all above average players, class players. Like, these are good players, but it's good enough for 7th. This is about where they should be from that 10 to 7 range, and he's got them essentially best of the rest. But Chelsea's down in 11 too, so there's an extra spot up for grabs up there.
Yeah, and actually one more team battling in the relegation, trying to stay above that little group of 3 that's pretty much looking like they're going down, is Nottingham, who lost at the weekend to Liverpool 1-0. But it was a scrappy goal. I mean, you look at it real quick, you see it's 90+9, and then there's a little bit of drama in that goal too that we'll get involved with. But it's one of those games that we've talked about it before a million times. Every league we talk about, if you want to be a league winner, there's going to be times where you don't perform to your best in the match, and you still need to somehow squeak away with 3 points. And that's kind of what Liverpool did here. I mean, they were all over Nottingham too. Give Liverpool a little bit of credit. 70% of the possession, 22 shots to 8. I mean, that's it's a bit of a dominance, but I mean the fact that Nottingham managed to hold on until like the 99th minute, which is unreal. You know, normally we're only on the field for 90 minutes, so a good account for them. But the drama that I was alluding to, was the fact that Nottingham were about to whip the ball in, but Konate had gone down with an apparent head injury. Ref stops play for head injury, as is the new laws to avoid concussions. And Konate comes back up, sees no treatment. The ball gets dropped to Kelleher, and then within a minute or two later, Darwin Núñez is putting that ball in the back of the net. So I don't know how you guys felt about that game, but it's interesting one to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, Liverpool definitely bossed the game, but I don't think you can say Forest didn't deserve anything from it, because I think although they didn't have a lot of chances, they did produce good chances to score. They just didn't have their finishing boots on. In terms of the decision, I think it's a total fuck up on Paul Tierney's part. I mean, I just watching the game, I was like, why are we giving the ball to Liverpool here? I mean, it's pretty much common sense. If you've played the game long enough, you would know the team that is in possession gets the ball back with the drop ball, and that's exactly what didn't happen. So I think there's got to be a lot of questions asked of Paul Tierney's decision making in that moment.
Yeah, Anthony Elanga actually had a really good opportunity. I think it was early on, if I'm not mistaken, where he was, I think, pretty much almost through and then just scuffed it. And Kelleher made a great save. I know we had already mentioned it last week. Can't remember if we put him in the five-a-side spot, but he's been filling. He's been filling Alisson's gloves, and those are some big gloves to fill. I know we mentioned that last week too, but that was a great save. I remember seeing that, and I was pretty surprised because Kelleher isn't the best keeper, but he's doing a good job.
I think
right
he's
now.
definitely proved himself as a really good shot stopper. I don't know, he's definitely not Alisson with the ball at his feet, but he can make the saves, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, speaks to Liverpool's depth, because this is a game that they probably should have dropped points in. And you say these kind of games are the ones that win championships.
Right.
Is you get the points no matter what, and they're doing it with likes of probably 3 or 4 players that wouldn't be starting this game, missing out on some of your best players, your best goal scorers, mainstays in this team, your starting keeper, and you still are able to pull it out. So I mean, that's what a true championship team will do. So yeah, credit to them and the mentality that's been instilled in the entire club by Klopp. That's huge. Yeah. But yeah, I do think that Nottingham Forest will feel hard done by, and that they at least deserve the point.
Yeah, I actually had a quick question. Speaking of a little bit of a rotation, this game was on behind me while I was at work, so I was catching glimpses. I didn't get to watch it too in depth. But was Joe Gomez really sitting in the midfield, in a midfield 3, or was this a different setup than what's on FOTMob right now? I was curious if anybody was really looking deep into Liverpool's tactics that game. I don't know if anybody has.
I didn't really notice it too much. I think it was just a FOTMob thing.
Yeah, I'm interested.
Yeah, I know he has been playing up there a bit. I mean, the way he usually plays fullback is kind of like that Pep thing. You go into midfield.
Yeah.
So I do think he's played enough of it. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what he did. But yeah, I didn't watch this game.
I think it's also a little more natural for him to go that way because he's right-footed on the left side. Mm-hmm. I think that makes a real difference. I don't think he's the best with his left foot, and it's really showed.
Yeah, I mean that's a new popular thing in this modern football, is the inverted fullback, and it's always seems to be Pep Guardiola who's coming up with these brilliant ideas. But speaking of Pep Guardiola, the showpiece game of the Premier League weekend, we don't have our resident Manchester fan here to talk about it, but I'm sure we all had our eyes on the game, the Manchester Derby, where United took an early lead through a brilliant goal from their young academy lad Rashford. But that was then equaled out by a brace from City's counterpart of academy player Phil Foden, and then Haaland scoring late into the game. It was a really actually exciting game. I'll give United credit; they went in early and tried to get the goal, but then from there they just tried to let City play, and I think that was just the wrong game plan, because then City were just all over them from that point on. But how did you guys feel about that game?
Yeah, I think Marcus Rashford scored the Manchester Derby goal of his dreams. I mean, talk about goals out of nothing. I mean, he absolutely smashed it. I remember when the ball was hit long from Onana, who we'll touch on soon because I thought he had a brilliant performance. He Yeah, I remember when he knocked that ball long and Bruno's running to the channel, I think with Ruben Diaz on him, I'm thinking, well, is this all it's going to be for United, just a hit and hope game? And hit hope, and they sure hoped well, and Rashford smashed it into the back of the net. He put them up 1-0, but I'm going to be honest, I don't think anybody watching the game, including myself, thought that United was going to kick on and grab another or defend for their lives and hold City to 1-0. I think the real English talent on display, Phil Foden, ultimately propelled City to the win. He scored a brilliant brace, a goal of the same quality, in my opinion, to match Rashford's to make it level. And I think we're gonna have to really start considering Foden being one of the best English players ever, in my opinion. I still stand by my belief that he's the most talented English player I've ever seen play. I've thought that since I first laid eyes on him. I think he does everything above average, and he does a lot. I think he's a lot better going forward, attacking wise, than some of these other legendary English midfielders. Hopefully, I don't disrespect too many fans by saying that. I know Patrick was a little up in arms when we were saying, "Oh, he's better than Rooney" and all this stuff, but it's just really hard to not think that when you watch him play. I mean, the kid does everything.
Yeah, and he really does too. Well, like we mentioned it, you highlighted it, Ange, a couple weeks back that when City didn't have KDB, he filled those shoes, and KDB gets touted as one of, if not the best Premier League midfielder ever. So if you can fill those shoes and put on a display that still stands out when compared to a player like that in the same team, I mean, you gotta get the respect enough to be in that kind of conversation. I think his ceiling is really really high. My English preference goes to Jude Bellingham, which we'll get to later. But I think England is pretty set in terms of midfield. Those two players side by side, I can only imagine what kind of damage they can do.
I think,
Yeah.
and I think the scariest part, before I let you go, Jay, is Phil Foden has 18 goals scored this season. I mean,
It doesn't seem like
these are Lampard numbers. I mean, this is what Lampard was doing. Not to mention the 10 assists. It's 28 goal contributions in 40 games. And he was doing it in a City side where he was the main threat going forward. I mean, Haaland was hurt for the majority of the season. Of course, KDB is only getting older, and he was out for the majority of the season as well. And, they've come back into the team, and it's still Foden, in my opinion, that's been kind of leading them to wins. I know De Bruyne and Haaland they're capable of combining for 4 goals in a cup game, but I've been so impressed with Phil Foden. I think he's been City's best player, and I thought it was really nice to see him have the standout performance on the night in a Manchester derby. It feels like it's the first Manchester derby that's stamped by Phil Foden in his young career, but a career that's seen him win 12 trophies so far. I know they were gloating about it and glazing him in the broadcast, and rightfully so. I mean, he's going to be in the five-a-side for me. I thought he was unbelievable.
Yeah, he's been fantastic, and we forget how young he was getting into the City team.
So young,
and
dude.
Granted, one of the best teams in the world at the time, and he's now getting to a point where, apart from maybe Haaland, you would say it's his team. Like, De Bruyne hasn't been able to stay fit enough, and then, I mean, he's still world class, but I mean, Foden's been filling the shoes pretty well. For a kid 23 years old, to be doing what he's doing, and those 2 goals were fantastic. And not only that, he plays so many different positions. He can play wide, he can play attacking midfielder, a little bit deeper, more of a playmaker, false 9. He's done it all, and he's done it fantastically. So yeah, it's really tough to shine in a City side, and he's very quickly been a man of the match basically every game that he's played this season. So yeah, he's been very impressive. When it comes to the United on this side, in my opinion, they just scored too early. They don't have the team to defend a 1-0 lead for what was it, 80 minutes? They scored in the first 10 minutes or something, right?
Yeah, it was the 8th minute.
Yeah. So I mean, they don't have the team for that. I mean, look at the subs that they made. Like, you can't defend. Excuse me, a lead like that, and then against City, by the way, who is almost guaranteed to score. And then your counter-attacking threats are going to be Anthony and a bunch of kids and Scott McTominay. It's like, what are you doing there? So, yeah, it's just they've never really had a chance, to be honest, United. So that goal came out of nowhere. But yeah, defending for 80 minutes just was never going to work.
Yeah, and I felt kind of bad for United. I mean, they are without Rasmus Højlund, and I would have liked to see, or rather, I would have been interested to see how the game plan would have differed if Højlund was able to start. It was Bruno playing in a false nine, and I think as soon as I saw the team sheet, my reaction was, okay, this is going to be a hit and hope type of game. They're going to try to keep as much of their dignity as possible, not have a result that absolutely kills the momentum they've had, because United have been really good in recent weeks, and I know it's something we've been talking about on previous podcasts. I'm waiting to hear what Gianluca has to say about Ten Hag, because I know he said he might take a dig at him here. But I think United made the most of the few chances that they had, albeit scoring a screamer from 25 yards out off the crossbar. But I'll try to be a little positive about United, because I think there were a couple good performances. I know Patrick wanted us to bring up Dalot, and he's been trying to make the case that Dalot has been United's best player of the season. He's certainly been one of the most consistent. And I think Onana probably had his best performance in a United shirt, or at least one of the better ones. I know it's hard to think that, considering he conceded 3. But I thought Onana was really good in the air. He came out and claimed a lot of balls. He was first to a lot in the air, punching it away. I remember in the first half, I thought to myself, it was one of the few performances where I think Onana was actually instilling confidence in his back line. It really wasn't United shooting themselves in the foot. I know the third goal is a sloppy play from Amrabat, but at that point, the game is already gone, and Amrabat has been a player who never, in my opinion, showed the quality to play for Manchester United, and he certainly hasn't showed it there. Unfortunately, he's been asked to play a number of different roles, but I actually thought Onana was really good in the game. What did you think, John?
Yeah, well, I'll start with Onana. I think you're right. I think he did have a very good game. He's definitely taken a step forward the last couple of weeks. I think since he's come back from AFCON, he's been a lot better, which is kind of surprising considering the shitstorm he came back from with everything that went down with the Cameroon national team. But anyways, I thought United played pretty well for the first half, really, but I felt like it was always going to be a smash and grab, where if they were ever going to score, it was going to be a wonder goal. They were never going to work something through and break City's defense down. And if I was a United fan, I would be so aggravated by this point. Like, this is the 4th derby now under the Ten Hag era. They've conceded 15 times in 4 games. They've only scored like 5, which, I mean, yeah, that's a lot, but when you concede 15, that's a problem. And how can you keep planting your flags on good performances and big picture and potential this, potential that? To me, it's all nonsense. Like, he's just regurgitating the same nonsense every single week, no matter if they win, lose, or draw. And if I was a United fan, I would be so pissed at this point. It really gives me a lot of shades of what was going on with Mourinho and Roma towards the end. I know United's obviously not in the same place that we were in terms of squad morale, and they've been playing better, but my big picture is they're not progressing. There's been no there's no positive big picture to me at all. I don't see anything moving forward here. I know they got some good wins, but they're beating the teams they should be beating, and then the games where you expect them to compete and you want them to compete, they're just getting played off the pitch. I mean, City are in a different class. I mean, that's exactly what this performance was. They're in a different class. And if I was a United fan, I would be livid, because this is Manchester United we're talking about here. This is no slouch club. This is the so-called greatest, most famous club in the world. And they don't even look like they're in the same league as Manchester City right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to play a little devil's advocate, G, I agree. I think I've been a critic of Ten Hag's, but I mean, United were without so many key players. I know Anne's already kind of briefly mentioned it, but I mean, you have in 2024 has been, pretty bright for United for the most part. A lot of good wins, just besides that Fulham game. But I mean, Lisandro Martinez out, Harry Maguire, who got a lot of critics before, but has been playing much better, is out. No Højlund, even Mason Mount, who gets a good game every now and then. No Wan-Bissaka, even Malacia, who's been playing well too. I mean, there was so many injuries. It's such a makeshift lineup too.
Let me counter this.
Yeah.
Does this not feel like this is the 4th time in the cycle of this Ten Hag era that we've gone through this, where they go through a patch of good form where they win 4, 5, 6 games on the bounce, and everyone's like, oh, they're turning around. And then we're back to square one. They lose. Oh, well, they have injuries. Oh, well, it's this. They're playing better, this and that. Yeah. Grand scheme of things, there's been it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And at some point, like, you got to go back to the drawing board and start over here, I think.
Yeah.
So I'll counter that point where I think that this is going back to the drawing board and starting over. Like the reason they've gotten into this situation is that they had that mentality where Manchester United, we deserve to be the best. We have to have the best players, and they're spending 90 million on a Di Maria that stinks. The Alexis Sanchez issue, like all those big transfers, is from that mentality of where Manchester United, we have to be the best. So I think what they've done is they've gotten rid of a lot of that, a little bit of a dead weight that they had. They're trying to rely more on some of the youth, some of the academy players, and then they need to just rebuild players from in that direction. I think the newer players that they've signed, like players like a Hoyland, like that's the type of player you need to target. Like the way Bruno was, like that style of player, you need somebody that's younger, coming up, and go after them, and not go after those big names that they're going after. Because like Varane he's been solid, hasn't been the best. Casemiro's been okay, but he's been pretty good when he plays, but he hasn't been able to play much. It's that is what they need to change, and I think they've started to do that, but they're just in this weird transition period right now where the players they do have aren't good enough, and the players they're trying to go after aren't really available. So it's like, I don't know. I don't want to make too many excuses for them, but I feel like this is probably what they're expecting for this season, and they're expecting next season to be the improvement.
I think I'm gonna agree with Gianluca here, because not only do I think the big picture is bleak, I think the current picture is kind of bleak. I know this might be a rash takeaway, but if you look at the table and the fixtures this weekend, everybody in the top 8 won, except United. You have West Ham, who are now 2 points behind them in 7th. Spurs won. They're now open a 6-point gap between themselves and United, and they have a game in hand. I mean, if Spurs can win their game at hand, it's a 9-point gap between United in 6th and the European places in 5th. I think if Ten Hag doesn't get them into a European spot, I don't know if I would sack him, but I would say the leash for next season is going to be very short. It remains to be seen what's going to go on with Ratcliffe and if they're going to get any influx of money to buy players. I mean, we all know that there's a number of areas we would strengthen. I mean, they just played Johnny Evans at center back and Lindelof at left back in a Manchester derby. I understand that the injuries are kind of hindering them, but at no point in United's history has the depth been this bad. I mean, again, like even the kids that were brought on, and I'm not trying to say that they're bad talents, but I don't know anything about them.
Established, yeah.
You know, I mean, and you look at the City side, and you know they have Phil Foden, who started when he was 16, and he's banging him in a derby. I don't want to go on a tangent, but I actually had a pretty good conversation with a coworker, big Chelsea fan, and we were talking about Phil Foden, and the point that I wanted to make to him was, and I've always kind of thought this, I think being able to play luxury players, being able to play youth players is a luxury. There's certain environments where I think youth players can exceed. And it's either when you're really, really good or you're really, really shit, not the in-between. I think United's in the in-between, and you know, when you're introducing youngsters away to Man City in a Manchester derby and you're 2-0 down, 2-1 down, sometimes 4-0 down at times, and they just come in and get battered. I mean, the confidence is gone. I'm sure we're going to talk about youngsters when we get to Serie A. There was a shocking performance in the Napoli-Juventus game, and that was where I tried to make this point. But when I look at some of these United players and the youth players that I'm talking about, you just hope that these times like this won't shatter their confidence. It's nice to see someone like Garnacho gain a starting role and Kabi Mino gain a starting role, but I think if this was the Manchester United of the past, these players wouldn't have a sniff of starting in these teams. I truly believe that. And, you know, I mean, like, look at what Liverpool are doing. I mean, they're first place in the Premier League. Granted, the gap's not big, but it's been happy days ever since Klopp arrived. And, you know, they can play 2, 3, 4 academy kids in a cup final and win. They can play them away to Forest and win. They can play them away against Southampton and win 3-0. So I've always kind of thought playing these youth players is a luxury. I think you have to bleed them in the right way. So I just hope this time period where United's having to rely on these young players doesn't hinder their development. But either way, I just don't think it looks good. I agree with Gianluca. It is kind of 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Yeah, and as far as playing, you know, young players when you're on the top or the absolute bottom, I mean, look at City. You know what I mean? The City's biggest critiques when they were first getting into like this power, of being dominant, was they were just buying everyone. But these last couple seasons, like Phil Foden, it's been academy player after academy player. I mean, we watch Oscar Bob this season, Rico Lewis. We've seen Sergio Gomes, pretty good.
I mean, yes or no, right? Like if you're a top player in Europe right now and top Premier League clubs are after you, Manchester United's not the team you're going to go to.
No.
Out of all,
you'd rather go to Villa.
Right.
I would go to Villa.
Right.
So I think that tells you all you need to know about where Manchester United is right now as a club.
Yeah, that's the hole they dug themselves that they have to get out of. But I mean, they're also the reason for it is the constant change of managers. You had 6 different guys' ideas in that squad, and they pay exorbitant wages to some of these players. Like Sancho is making $300K a week to sit on the bench.
Yeah.
Like not even sit on the bench
too.
Yeah, so it's like that is the high level United issue that needs to get resolved before any of this stuff on the pitch can even get touched, which is the problem. That's why you've got players like Johnny Evans having to come in. So yeah, it's a long problem that needs to get fixed. So I think they just already wrote this season off and hoping for better next year.
Yeah, and I feel like we say that so early in every season these past couple of years for United, so it's tough. But they definitely just need a full restructuring. But a team in the top 8 that is flying. This is 3 away games in a row where they score 5+ goals. I think these last 3 away games, it's all been shutouts. So I think it's 16 goals to none conceded in 3 games, which is unreal. Arsenal smoked Sheffield as expected, but I mean it was 5-0 at halftime. This is just insane. I mean, Arsenal look like they're flying. They've had a couple blips. I know we talked about the Porto game, but they're making real contention for this. I think this Premier League race, Liverpool get the 3 points. Everybody got 3 points this weekend, but it's tight, and there's a lot of strong performances from these 3 teams. But specifically on Arsenal, how do you guys feel about this absolute away dominance that they're demonstrating?
Well, Arsenal, I think everyone's won in that top race, and everyone keeps winning in that top race, but Arsenal have been far away the better side of all of them in the last 6-7 games. Ever since they beat Liverpool, I mean, they've really kicked on. They've gone up, I would say, 2-3 gears. I wouldn't say 1 gear. I think they've really made a complete change, honestly, in their team. And I think a lot of people were giving them shit because they weren't scoring. And I don't know, like it's hard to really even pinpoint what changed in the team. I mean, obviously the way they were playing set pieces now is making a huge difference. But I mean, the last few games for Arsenal, we've been making the meme that it's a fire drill at halftime. Against Sheffield, it was a fire drill after 20 minutes. The fans are already leaving the game. I mean, if you're a fan of an opposing team coming against Arsenal right now, do you even feel like showing up to the game? Like, what's the point at this rate? I mean, you're gonna get battered no matter what. I mean, they're playing unbelievable, and it's almost hard to see how they're going to be stopped. I mean, the way they press, the way they move the ball so quickly at times, it's kind of impossible. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to be a defender going up against any of these guys right now. And if I was a goalkeeper, I might as well take an injury and take the week off.
Yeah, GD, to your point, I don't think anything has changed except the finishing. I think they're playing pretty similar to what they've played all year. They're just now finally have that end product.
Boots are there.
Yeah, I mean, like there was times like I've seen even when City, they've been at their best for years, but the way that Arsenal is able to move the ball within the box, I think is very impressive, and it's better than most teams. But the problem is they move it around there and nothing happens.
Yeah.
So they finally have some end product. They're scoring some goals, and I think that's what they've been missing. I don't think they've played all that poorly in those games they lost and drew earlier this year. But now something's flipped, where now they can score goals and at will too. Because it's a stupid amount of goals that they've scored the last few games.
Can I ask a dumb question?
Yeah.
Do you think Jesus coming out of the team has helped them score more, or do you think it's made no difference? Because as much as I love Jesus, I want to say it's actually helped them. I feel like he takes a little too much time almost. I think that without him there, they can move the ball a little bit quicker, and that gives them that extra half second to get a shot off and find the goal.
So I don't think that's the reason they're doing better. I don't think it's specifically because of him, but I think they were always playing to him when he was in the team. You're always focusing on getting a ball into the box, into your striker. Whereas now their goals are coming from different places, from everywhere, far wide, from midfield outside the box. You have players making different runs they weren't always making. So I think having a little bit of a more mobile striker, mobile in quotations, meaning just where they go, because I mean Havertz I think is taller and he's more of a target man, but the way he likes to move, and same with Trossard, is different and invites more runs from wide and from midfield to overlap. So I think it just changes a little bit of the style that they're attacking with, and I think it's helpful to them.
A point I wanted to make, I know Angelo looks like he's itching to say something, but as far as where the goals are coming from, I think you guys are making a good point and are kind of scratching the surface of it, is because, yeah, Jesus was kind of the focal point of a lot of it the last time Arsenal were in this really good run of form, and then they kind of dipped a little bit. And normally we talk about how a lot of teams really need this number 9, really someone as a focal point to get goals, but it looks like just passing the eye test on these last 3 games away, it's the front 3 that are consistently, all 3 of them combining for a number of the goals, and then they're able to get goals randomly across the pitch in different positions. I mean, the score sheet doesn't always say the same names each week, and I think that's key to why they're getting these huge blowout games, is that rather than trying to play centrally or just trying to play through one man and have the focal point, even though that works for some other clubs, they're really dispersing a lot of the responsibility going forward. So I think that's changed up the game for them completely.
All right, now it's my turn. I'm going to say something controversial here. What I will say is, I think what's kind of like impressive is everybody in this Arsenal team is like hitting a purple patch at the same time, and I think I've like never really seen that before. Even with the Man City teams, I mean, Doku was terrible. He's been terrible. He still starts. There's only been a few times where Man City, you can really say that like anybody on the field in the front 7 could grab you a goal. But that is certainly the case with Arsenal. What I'm gonna say now is I understand that it's 3 consecutive wins of 5+ goals, no goals conceded. I think the stat is 31 goals in their last 7 Premier League games. They've beaten nobody impressive, in my opinion. I'll give you the result at home to Liverpool. That was a wonderful result, a result that I personally wasn't surprised that Arsenal win. That I wasn't surprised that Arsenal won the game, but I thought the way in which they won the game did not prove to me that they're a better side than Liverpool. It certainly didn't prove to me that they're a better side than Man City, and that was my takeaway from the game at the time. If you look at the other results, they beat a Palace team who we know what happened to them, and their coach, Roy Hodgson, is probably retired now and will never coach again, rightfully so. He's terrible. I'm pretty sure they beat them without Olise and Eze. They went away to West Ham, who at that time had no Kudus, had no Paquetá. They were terrible. They were coming off the back of still not winning in February at the point they played them. I think it was the 7th game in a row that West Ham did not pick up a point. They went to Burnley, they're a championship side. They went to Sheffield, another championship side, and they beat a Newcastle team who have also been rattled with injuries. I think the scorelines are a little hyperbolic at the level in which Arsenal are performing. They're still in 3rd place. If they go away to City and win, they're probably still not going to be in 1st place. So I think there's still a lot of work to be done in the table. The momentum is there, but I think the race is still far from being in Arsenal's hands. I think they really squandered an opportunity last year to win the title when it was in their hands, and now they're going to have to try to play underdog, but they're actually the underdog. Last season, Man City were the underdog. People don't want to talk about that. I truly believe that last season Arsenal were the favorites to win the Premier League, and they bottled it. If they come back and win this league with the way Klopp's Liverpool have been playing and the way City have been playing, I mean, I'll be shocked. To be honest, I still don't think they're the favorites, and that says a lot coming off the back of these results. They just went away to Porto and lost. I mean, we'll see how they do in these hostile environments where, they're kind of sucker punched in the mouth. But I mean, the game away to Porto was 0-0 the whole game. Okay, I understand Porto scored a screamer, but Porto could have scored 1 or 2 goals besides that. So we'll see. They've scored a lot of goals
in that game.
They also, they didn't even have a shot on target. So, look, they've scored a lot of goals, but as I tend to be that person in our friend group, I'm gonna drag everybody down to earth and say, let's relax, because I can't believe I'm saying it, but I still haven't been overly impressed with the results. It's goals from all different places. That's great, but they're scoring set pieces, bro. I mean, I think defending the Premier League sucks. I think that's what my takeaway is from all these games. Like, how are you conceding 2-3 headers in the same game, 3 games in a row? I mean, have any of these goals been wonder goals? Are they really playing teams off the pitch? I think they're just beating teams that they should be beating.
No, that's a fair assessment.
Am I being crazy?
It's a fair assessment. I think the reason where we can be a bit more optimistic or maybe a little more confident that it's a turn is that they weren't doing this last year. Like when they weren't beating up on the bad teams.
Right.
They were still struggling to get the goals. And I think the fact that they're now able to get those goals, they've got 4 center backs playing. I mean, Kivior was not planned to be playing any games, and now he's been a mainstay. He's locked down that left back position. That's now his. And like we mentioned before, Gabriel Jesus was supposed to be the main striker, scoring all the goals. He hasn't really been that. You've got more production out of players. I mean, we trash on Martinelli a lot. He's contributing now, and so it's like they're getting more out of their players, and they are beating up on little teams. Yeah, like they're winning the games they should, which is the reason, because they didn't do that last year, is the reason they lost the title. So I think that's why we can be a bit more optimistic. And yeah, we're talking about how great City and Liverpool have been.
Right. But there's 2 points that separate them. We're still not doing Arsenal justice at all by saying that they're playing to that standard.
No,
you know
not
what
at
I mean?
all.
And I will be kind of positive in saying that, there's a pretty obvious reason as to why all these Arsenal players are coming into form at the same time, and that's Mikel Arteta. And I think if I will offer a bit of positivity is there really has been steps forward taken in pretty much every season that Arteta's been in charge. I mean, I think if they would have won the title last season, it would have been ahead of schedule, in my opinion. Maybe this is the season, maybe it's not. I argue that they're probably still a season away, and maybe next year they'll take advantage of a Liverpool team that'll be without Klopp, and maybe will take a dip in form, but they'll still have to beat out City to it. Who knows? Maybe City lose a couple pieces to Saudi Arabia. Guys get their heads turned. They've won all they can win. We'll see. But I gotta be honest. Like I'm still really not impressed yet with Arsenal, despite all these big results.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think the point you made about the schedule of Arsenal, I do agree. There's potential if they can continue to build and continue to find pieces to make this side even stronger than it already is.
Yeah.
That almost losing the title last season, as stupid as it might sound, was like a blessing in disguise. I mean, we've talked a couple times already about your Milan, right? Where it seems like pieces are falling apart because you won ahead of schedule. Yeah, it's great as a fan and as a club that you have that Scudetto in your trophy cabinet. But now it's like, it's not just winning one season. That's not what it's about. It's about winning over the course of, a decade, starting an era, you know what I mean? And
pushing yourself.
Right, and you got to keep pushing forward. Arsenal don't want to just win one Premier League. They want to win 3 and 5, you know what I mean? They want to do something like that. And that probably would not have happened if that happened last year. So I think credit to Ange. I mean, you have a sense for these kinds of things sometimes. But I think, to your point, I think the end of March will be a great conversation for us because we'll see City Liverpool and we'll see Arsenal City. Obviously, it's going to be because we all give City probably the favorites in terms of winning this title. So if City can beat both of those games, I think it'll be done and dusted at that point. But if there's some shocking results there, I think that'll set up for an interesting end of the run. And I think that we should revisit this conversation strongly. I know next week we have a Liverpool City, but definitely in a couple weeks' times when we've seen both games play, that's going to be where the bulk of this conversation happens again. Wrapping up the Premier League, a couple other storylines we had. Tottenham trying to make their way back into the fold for 4th place. Currently 5 points behind, but they do have that game in hand with a hypothetical 3. That's just 2-point gap. We know Villa can stumble, so I think Tottenham actually have a really good chance if they maintain form to break that top 4. But they did beat Palace, who are obviously we've talked about haven't been as good. They did get Eze back. But it was still a really good performance from a Kane-less Tottenham who have shown that they can do without their former talisman. Another couple of games we saw Newcastle United, like you mentioned, every team in the top 8 won. They won against Wolves. Wolves come crashing down from a little bit of high form that they had. But nothing too crazy for the Wolves side to be worried about. I think Newcastle are catching a little bit of form, getting a couple players back. I think just take the away loss, eat it, keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
Wolves are still a strong side.
And one other thing too, I wanted to say about Wolves quick. I think it was just an unfortunate loss, really. I mean, they lost Pedro Neto and Jose Sa at halftime to injury, so
Yeah.
I think that's two pretty key figures to lose at that moment in such an important time in the game. So, it's a tough loss for Newcastle. I mean, for Wolves, but I think overall, I think they should just continue looking up because they've been fantastic all season.
Yeah, 2 top goal scorers out too. A little bit of I wouldn't say makeshift lineup, but they're not a deep team that can afford to replace players. So I don't think they'll be too concerned about that. More concerned about the health of the players that we're missing and had to leave early.
Yeah, and I don't think they were played off the pitch in this game either. I think it was balanced. They fumbled the bag a little bit in conceding chances, and then of course they lose 2 big players, key players in their positions. So it's tough. And then Fulham knock out Brighton, who, despite me being a pretty big Brighton fan, Brighton just not having the best year in 2024. On and off, started a little bright, but then have just had some serious losses, and they can't seem to find that consistent form they were having before. Again, I don't think they were hoping for too much this season, so they can't complain too much sitting 9th, middle of the pack. It's more or less where they belong in terms of quality, but they will be a little bit disappointed on that. And unless anybody has any other ideas or thoughts on the Premier League, I think it's time to move to the boot of Europe. Give our Italianos a chance to talk about an eventful weekend. I do really want to get into that Lazio game when Ange gets there, but I'll hand the floor over to you boys.
Well, lucky for you, we're going to start with it. And yeah, you highlighted it pretty well. I think it was one of the more dramatic weekends in the Serie A. Definitely one of probably the one I enjoyed the most, to be honest. It's always nice when Milan beats Lazio. For those who don't know, this has kind of been a fiery fixture the past couple of seasons, really for no reason at all. I remember when Acerbi was still there, there was I don't remember if there was a suspension given, but there was the graphic going around of Kessié and Bakayoko holding Acerbi's jersey up after they did a swap. Acerbi, of course, being a former Milan youth player, and another former Milan youth player who represents Lazio now, Alessio Romagnoli, was seen at the end of the game saying "scandalo, scandalo" to the Lazio faithful. Scandal. It was a scandalous result, and it was hard not to think it was because if you didn't catch the game, it was 3 red cards to the Laziali, and I'm going to be honest, I thought none of them were red cards. It was an absolutely appalling performance from the referee, Marco Di Bello, somebody who, in my opinion, is one of the better Serie A referees. I'm always pretty pleased when he refs Milan games. I don't know if Gianluca thinks of him in a similar light, but he got a lot of things wrong. And a lot of the red cards were kind of just in retaliation. Hopefully, without taking too long, I'll try to run through the red cards. The first one is given to Luca Pellegrini. So
I thought this was the deserved one, to be honest.
Oh, see, I didn't. So this was Luca Pellegrini received a second yellow card. The first yellow card was a typical yellow card challenge. It was deserved. No problem. What I think Marco Di Bello got wrong was Tati Castellanos, the Lazio number 9, goes down with an apparent head injury. It did happen behind the referee's back, so I haven't seen any confirmation on whether or not he saw Tati Castellanos laying on the pitch, but the Lazio players and his teammates certainly noticed it. The ball was making its way to the touchline. Luca Pellegrini, Lazio's left back, was kind of pointing at Castellanos, trying to get the referee's attention. The referee chose to not blow the whistle. In typical CONCACAF USA blue-collar fashion, Christian Pulisic tracks the ball down, skips around Pellegrini, and is then dragged to the floor after getting around him, to which Di Bello finally blew the whistle and gave Pellegrini a second yellow card. And it all kicked off from there. Maurizio Sarri was booked. The Lazio players were incensed. There was a lot of coming together, forehead clashes. I thought people were going to kiss. The last 40 minutes was, like, honestly one of the worst 40 minutes of football I've ever watched in my life. Really, no football was played. Di Bello was blowing the whistle every 30, 45 seconds. The Lazio players were so uninterested with the rest of the game. We saw a bad elbow thrown to the back of the head of Giroud. which was the only red card challenge in the game, and it wasn't even. I don't even think he got a card for it. It was insane. Maricic got a weak red card. Guendouzi just kind of two-hand shoved Pulisic in the back as he coasted past him on a counterattack. That was given a straight red card. I think Di Bello absolutely lost the plot. I think he made a bad decision, and the Lazio players just really couldn't contain themselves. It was a terrible, terrible display. But what I will say from a Milan perspective, I'm glad nobody got injured because there was a couple scary challenges in my opinion. But we managed to score. Noah Okafor got the goal, somebody who I was pretty excited to see come in the door. He's been criticized a lot in the media along with Samuel Chukwueze. They're two attacking, fast wingers that profiles that Milan have kind of lacked and have finally supplied along with Pulisic this season, but they definitely haven't proved their price tags or their loan obligations or loans with obligations to buy. So it was cool to see him get a goal, filling the shoes of Luka Jovic's usual sub appearance off the bench. But there's almost no football to be talked about with the amount of times play was stopped. What did you think, Gianluca?
Yeah, I think going into this game, I just knew it was going to be such a fiery affair. I mean,
yeah, it has been the last couple times.
It was against Lazio that you guys claimed the Scudetto, was it not? That Tonali scored that goal.
No, we claimed that on the last day. But that was a big game too.
That was a big game against Lazio though, and I just knew it was going to be a mess. And I mean, I think mess is an understatement. I didn't think Di Bello was bad to start the game. I thought he kind of like reffed away the game.
It was out of nothing. I think it was just.
And then once that one decision went the wrong way, I did think it was a second. Yeah, I don't think like regardless of what you think of the situation with the head injury, you can't pull a player down like that.
I agree. It was certainly what he did deserved a yellow card. I just thought.
Especially already not for nothing. He's already on a yellow card. Like, what are you fucking thinking, Pellegrini? Like, clearly not thinking at all there. So I was fine with, but I think he just started tossing out red cards because he lost control, and he felt like throwing red cards out there would kind of garner some of his strength back with the Lazio players. But that clearly was not the case, and it was just making things worse.
Yeah, he was just.
Other than that, like you said, there's really like no fucking football to talk about from this game at all because it was just crap. I mean. It was just a war, all-out war, nothing else.
Yeah, and like you said, he really was adding fuel to the fire with the cards he was giving out. I'll speak from a Lazio perspective now. What a terrible couple of weeks for Lazio. I know that they beat Bayern at home, and on the day of recording, they're now out of the Champions League, which we'll get to probably in a later European roundup episode this week that you can be on the lookout for. But if you look at Lazio's recent results, it's losses to Fiorentina, Bologna, now Milan. All teams that, in my opinion, they're on level with. I know Milan sits in third, and Lazio I think sits in eighth, ninth now. It might be
last year. Like we forget place.
That. Yeah, I mean Lazio had a good season. They've seemed to taken a step back. They lost some big fixtures in their hopes for the top four. Their season is over as of tonight, day of recording. As far as I'm concerned, they have absolutely nothing to play for. I think top four is too far away now with 11 points. I mean, it's only 7 points away if you talk about it from a fifth place perspective, and it remains to be seen if if the Serie A will get a fifth Champions League spot. But just some bad results for Lazio, and I think the red card given to Pellegrini was kind of the boiling point for a couple bad performances in a row in the Serie A. But we can talk about the red and yellow side of Rome now if you'd like. Certainly been happier days for Roma. 4-1 winners against Monza. The Daniele De Rossi era is kicking on. I think they beat another team that you'd expect them to beat, but I think the wins are becoming a little more and more impressive. They're starting to get top performances from their top players. You must be happy again.
Yeah, I'm definitely very, very satisfied with how we've been playing lately, especially with the fixtures we have coming up. We do play Brighton in the Europa League this week, which is going to be huge.
Yeah.
But I think... I don't know, like the way I've just really enjoyed watching this so much lately. The way we move the ball, the way that we press. I mean, it's just been a night and day difference from the start of the season to where we are right now. I have to say I'm thoroughly impressed with De Rossi's like tactical knowledge and his ability to manage the game. I mean, his substitutions are pretty much spot on every time. He brings the right players in, and those players that come in always seem to make an impact. I do want to say, Dybala has been otherworldly in the last few weeks, and I think
looks younger now.
I think Baldanzi coming in has really lit a fire under his ass. I think
Maybe, yeah.
he realized that his place in the team is not under threat, but like there's a thought there where De Rossi's like, well, if he doesn't play well, I have an option now where I can play Baldanzi over him if I want to. And I mean, he's been unbelievable lately. He's played more minutes in the last 3 games than I've seen him play in his entire time as a Roma player. I think he's
Right.
got like he played 102 minutes against Feyenoord. He played the whole game in both the last games. So I mean, it's just awesome to see him performing at this level. I mean, he scored another brilliant goal this weekend with a great free kick, and the goals we scored this weekend too. We're beating a goalkeeper in Di Gregorio who hasn't conceded in like 11 hours of Serie A football. So he's been one of the best players, best goalkeepers in Italy and across Europe, in my opinion, this season. And to score goals in the way that we did, in the manner that we did against him, I think is just thoroughly impressive. And to wrap up, I just want to say, Pellegrini, man, what a fucking
Yeah, I was
player
gonna
this guy is,
talk
dude.
about him.
Oh my God, he has been unbelievable the last few weeks. He scored another great goal this weekend, and it was just, I mean, it's just fantastic watching him play. He's in my opinion, he is the one midfielder that Italy does not have another player like him. He can do everything. He sees the last pass. He can play that final ball. He's got a great eye for a goal in the goals you've seen him score in the last couple weeks, and he just runs and runs and runs. He puts 100% effort, and he'll just never stop. He will die on that field for you, and it's everything we need in a captain. He epitomizes what it means to be Roma. He's like De Rossi's extension out onto the field, which is just awesome.
Yeah, he's the type of player that I think every fan would love to have. Somebody that really does bleed the colors on the shirt. He loves playing for the Roma badge, of course, being a Roma-born player. And I'm glad you brought him up because he was who I was going to talk about. I think Pellegrini's making a really late shout. I think he has to be in the Italy squad. I think he should be a starter. I hope he plays in the friendly that we're going to see because I'd certainly like to see him in live action. He's unbelievable, great with both feet, and he really can do everything like you said. I think he's on his day. He's better going forward than Barella, and I think Barella is the only player of a similar cut of cloth to Pellegrini. I hope he gets in the Italy squad and starts because, I mean, it's going to be hard for Spalletti not to include him off the back of these performances. And I think the one thing I really want to give De Rossi credit for is you're seeing performances from Roma's best players finally. I think with Jose Mourinho, maybe it was a little too tactical at times, a little too defensive at times, and he was kind of asking Dybala to pull the rabbit out of the hat with the bags of quality that he has. And at his age, you just can't do that all the time. And I think it's nice. It certainly must be refreshing for Dybala to have Pellegrini on the pitch. I mean, Pellegrini wasn't even on the field when Jose Mourinho was there, and I think I could have went in there and put Pellegrini on the pitch and been praised for it. I mean, he's been Roma's best player of this decade, in my opinion. It's Pellegrini. So good for Roma. Credit to them. Again, they beat a team that they should beat.
They're in fifth now, though.
They are keeping up with the teams around them. And if we are going to keep talking about the teams around them, another really great game, top 4 race, European implications. Atalanta hosting Bologna. It was Gasperini versus Thiago Motta, two of the more tactical coaches in the Serie A, and it's young Thiago Motta, the apprentice, who's done one over on Gasperini, is Joshua Zirkzee again. Did he score? I think he did score. He did score. I thought so.
And then there was the Scottish Zidane, Lewis Ferguson.
It was Zirkzee from the spot. It was Lewis Ferguson. They've been really the two main protagonists for Bologna this season. And unlike Lazio, Bologna are beating the teams around them they need to beat. They've beaten Fiorentina. They've beaten Lazio. And now they've beaten Atalanta in their last 4 games. Yeah, beaten Roma. They've tied Milan. They tied Inter. They tied Juventus. They're not losing to the big teams, and they're beating the teams in the bottom half of the table. They're so exciting to watch. They have a little gap in the top 4. I don't know what the future is like for them. I know I said in a previous podcast, their owners kind of telling everybody to calm down, enjoy the moment, stop linking my players with moves abroad. He wants to be able to enjoy the moment. Bologna are a darling club of the Serie A. They've been in the Serie A for so long. They're an historic club. They're very important to a lot of Italians, so it's nice to see them doing well, but they were unbelievable. They won the midfield battle against Atalanta. There's not a lot of teams that do that, in my opinion. I thought they were brilliant.
Yeah, I think it was you I texted after the game, and I was like, Malta beat Gasparini at his own game, and I was
It
just
was
so impressed.
unbelievable.
It tells you just how good of a tactical coach that Thiago Malta really is. Like, if you didn't think he was the real deal, and you thought some of these results were a fluke,
Hmm.
th- beating this team and in the fashion that they beat this team this weekend, I mean, it speaks for itself, in my opinion. And I think the best thing I saw out of everything was, did you see that video of Orsolini with the fans jumping out of the
Yeah,
sunroof? Dude, like the vibes in
unbelievable.
Bologna must be unbelievable right now. I can only imagine what it's like to be a fan of that club and to experience this. I mean, this is historic for them. I couldn't tell you in my lifetime that I've ever seen Bologna even this close to touching the top four, and they are in the top four. They're well and truly solidified fourth place. I think that, in my opinion, there's no shadow of a doubt that they're going to be one of the 4 or 5 Italian teams that goes on to play in the Champions League next season. And I hope that they're able to hold on to these players. I think that if they do qualify, that financial boost that they'll get might actually spur the ability for them to keep Malta, to keep guys like Xerxes, like Ferguson or Orsolini. So my hope is that they keep everything together and that the story can continue on. But I mean, what a joy it is to watch this team week in and week out. They're another one that, like, I think I said it a couple weeks ago, where I look forward the most to see
Hmm.
Leverkusen play. I think Bologna right now are number 2 for me, to who I enjoy watching the most right now.
Yeah, and
Nah, I agree. You can go. Yeah, go ahead, Nate.
yeah, I was just quickly gonna say, you guys obviously been talking a lot about Bologna. I've started to try to get, sneak in a couple minutes here and there every week, and I was especially interested in this week, obviously playing against Atalanta with our European fixture coming up. Sporting playing Atalanta this week, so I was something that I wanted to see how the game might go, and obviously it was a brilliant game to kind of catch, even if you can only catch a couple minutes of it. The tactical battle was really strong going on both sides. And as silly as it sounds, I hope Ruben Amorim takes a couple notes from Thiago Motta in this game, because obviously he outwitted Gasparini, and
Actually, it's actually a good point you brought that up, because it's kind of almost a perfect way for him to see how he's going to line up against Atalanta for Amorim, because I wouldn't say formation wise they play similar, but I think tactically, Sporting and Bologna kind of move the ball in a similar way and attack in a similar way. So I think it was definitely good to see that, as not have an influence, but to get an idea of what to do.
yeah, absolutely. I think Bologna, just the minutes I don't get to catch entire games week in week out, but they're a super exciting team. They maintain the ball, and then they attack with strength and with numbers, so it's fun to watch for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think Sporting will all have a good chance. I mean, I know in possession they're kind of a 3-4-3 system. Sporting, that is, it's exactly what Bologna are. I mean, if you watch them play, Riccardo Calafiori, who arguably is their most talented player. I know I've been hyping up Xerxes, but
Oh, mad
he's
we sold him.
he's somebody that doesn't get a lot of credit. I mean, this kid is going to go right to the top of the game. I'm not even kidding. I think he could play for Man City one day. I think he honestly reminds me of a young John Stones type profile. And if you want to know anything about how Bologna play, I mean, there's a couple of times where Calafiori's making the trailing run and is getting on the end of some of these long balls. They're fun to watch. It remains to be seen what the future holds for Bologna. I hope they can keep their players. But we'll move on to another game that had, I think it does have top four implications. I might have a hot take to make at the end of this segment, but we saw Napoli play hosts to Juventus. It's been probably my favorite fixture the last couple seasons in the Serie A, ever since Koulibaly blasted that header in a couple seasons ago away at the Allianz, and that was the first time in probably 30 years that Napoli fans thought they were going to finally get their hands on the Scudetto with Sarri. They ultimately bottled it. And obviously, here we are a few seasons later with Napoli being the defending champions. And they look like defending champions on Sunday for the first time in a while, playing host to Juventus, who I thought were actually the better team. I think Juventus wasted a lot of big chances. I don't know what has happened to Dusan Vlahovic. I mean, he looks like a donkey sometimes. The chances he's missed. I mean, ever since comparing himself to Haaland, I don't think he's gotten anywhere close to the levels of ability that he showed in his first season at Juventus. It was so many missed chances from Juventus. I would like to see what the XG is. I actually don't even know, but I remember watching the game thinking that Napoli, I thought, were kind of lucky to get all 3 points. They ultimately won the game on a penalty, which was missed by Osimhen, but then blasted in by Jack Raspadori. It was cool to see Napoli win, get the 3 points, a massive result for their season. I think they have taken a turn under Calzona. I thought the draw against Barcelona in the Champions League was a big result, a result that will help them to believe. And I think they play Napoli, Barcelona next week, right? I don't think it's this week.
Next week.
So we'll see what they can do. There's momentum in Napoli, but it was the first time watching a Napoli game this season at home where the fans were up for it. There was De Laurentiis jumping up and down, Chi non salta, Juventino. He who doesn't jump is a Juventino. He was jumping with the fans. The vibes are high again in Napoli. It really reminded me of last season. And Napoli have fared pretty well against Juventus. Obviously, last season it was 5-1 at the Maradona. It's now 7-2 on aggregate at home. The last 2 games against Juventus, something that we haven't been able to say too much. But yeah, it's good times for Napoli. They're still a ways off the top 4, but I think if things continue like this, they're going to have a say. There's still a lot of football to be played. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I think you're right. Juventus have really struggled. Napoli have had their number. I think it's since 2019 they haven't won in Naples, which is kind of impressive, actually, if you really think about the Juve team that we've seen the past couple seasons and how good they've been. But my biggest takeaway was, like you said, I think Napoli have really found their identity again. They're certainly not the Spalletti Napoli of last season, but you can see they have an idea now. Like when they get the ball again, like when Kvara and Osimhen get the ball, they have that idea like they had last season. You get that feeling like something's going to happen. I feel like there was times when I was watching them this season under Mazzari and under Rudy Garcia where they just looked so dejected and so like uninterested in what was going on. Mm-hmm. And I think the most notable thing, in the last 3 games, Napoli have scored 9 goals. Yeah. In 11 games under Walter Mazzari, they scored 9 goals. Yeah. I think that tells you everything you need to know about just the mental state of this squad, like how they feel under Calzona. He clearly knows. I wouldn't say he knows the best way to get out of these, get like the best out of his players, but I think he went in there and was like, okay, these guys like playing Spalletti's way. They like being fluid. They like attacking in numbers. Why not just go back to basics and do that? Because Rudy Garcia and Mazzari tried to come in here and do this complicated shit and change things around, change the tactics, change the system, and they've just crashed and burned. And Calzona in 3 games has completely turned it around, going back to the basics.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head, Jason. I mean, talk about reinventing the wheel. I mean, Mazzari was subbing Kvara off after 60 minutes. Yeah. I mean, what are we doing? This was a player who, could have made the team of the season last year, in my opinion. And speaking of Kvaratskhelia, what a brilliant goal he scored. Just the instinct he showed to get on the end of the cross, blasting it past Szczesny, and it was such a beautiful celebration. Not a single person kept their ass on the Napoli bench. Everybody sprinted down the touchline after him. It was a wonderful celebration, and honestly, as soon as the goal went in and I saw the celebration, I thought there was no way that they were going to lose that game. Federico Chiesa, who I was shit-talking a little bit in the group chat, finally showed up for a game. I thought he was Juventus' best player. He certainly never stopped running until the final whistle. He scored a brilliant goal, a goal that honestly I was like, wow, like where has this been? I don't know. I mean, he looked like his Euro 2020 self again. Hopefully that kicks on for him, for his sake, for Juventus' sake, for the Azzurri's sake, because I don't know who is going to play on the wings for Italy come the summertime, but that's a whole other tangent. Chiesa was really the only bright spot to highlight in this Juventus team. And I know I brought up earlier a conversation about youth to be had. Allegri went with a youngster, Nonge. And excuse me, I don't remember his first name, but Nonge, his surname. He came on against Juventus, had a stamp on Osimhen in the box. He was guilty of giving away the penalty, and then right after the goal went in, Allegri dragged him off, and it was really sad. And it's just, that was what made me make the point to my coworker of, there's certain times where you introduce a youth player. I don't think you do it away to Napoli 1-1. Huge game for Juventus this season, because obviously they've lost now. Inter has won. The Scudetto race is surely over, and rightfully so. Honestly, screw him, screw Allegri. He's been such an ass in the media. He's been talking all this crap about how Juventus are not the second-best team in Italy, and we shouldn't be even close to Inter, and nobody should expect us to compete this season, blah, blah, blah. Well, they've only won one game in their last 6. They've lost to Inter. They've lost to Udinese. They've lost to Napoli, rightfully so. I think he's a coward for the way he's been talking and representing his team. I don't know how he still has a job, to be honest. I think he's done nothing positive in his Juventus tenure. And I'm actually interested to see, before you go, the final point I want to make is I'm actually interested to see how Bayern respond to losing the league for the first time after 10, 11 years, because I think Juventus have responded absolutely terribly.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they haven't even been close to winning the Serie A in the last 3 seasons. Obviously, we saw Inter win, then my Milan. It was Napoli last season. It's certainly not going to be Juventus again. I don't even care if they finish in second place. At the rate we're going, Inter's going to win the league by 15, 16 points. What did you have to say, Jay?
I was going to say, about a couple months ago, you're pretty convinced that
it was close.
That Milan was locked into third place, and there was no chance of they should back it up. It's pretty much done.
That's a good point.
Now you're about a point away from Juve, right? And you also got Bologna breathing up your backs too if you guys slip up. So all of a sudden, this is like you guys better stay on it.
Milan finishing above Juventus is like my built-in Scudetto, so that might be the only trophy we win this year.
You think that's on?
What?
Finishing above Juventus from
Milan? Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, Milan's been in good form. I think if Juventus continues the way they do, who knows? But
you guys play them again too, right?
Yeah, we do, and I think, but we'll see. I mean, we're actually in a European competition, so we have other things to focus on, unlike Juventus. But that's enough about them. There were some good results for Milan, Bologna, Napoli, Roma this season in the Serie A. Some other headlines we wanted to touch on too. There was some massive relegation battles. The first of which was Verona hosting Sassuolo, who lost. They've lost off the back of sacking Dionisi. Awful result. They were terrible. And I think the worst part of it all was Domenico Berardi's done his Achilles heel. He made his first start in a couple months. He's had a bad Achilles injury. He was helped off the field in tears. Terrible. There was a part of me inside that was crying as well because I think a lot of Serie A fans recognize Domenico Berardi. Whether he's on a team in first place or 20th, he's the best player in the Serie A that doesn't belong to one of the Seven Sisters, in my opinion. It's been that way, certainly for the last couple seasons. Awful injury. It was terrible. He knew right away. He went down. Very sad. That's what prompted me to think about the future of the Azzurri and really the future of Sassuolo. It's looking very, very bleak because the other result, Cagliari hosting Empoli, Cagliari won the game 1-0. So Sassuolo are currently in 19th. They're 3 points away from their opponents, Verona, who they lost to, but just a massive result for head-to-head, too. Obviously, for those who aren't familiar, Serie A doesn't look at goal difference when it comes to the table. It's head-to-head result. So if there is a world where after the final match day, Sassuolo and Verona are level on points, Verona will be ahead of them. So things are not looking good for Sassuolo.
Yeah, I think I actually wanted to say I think that Cagliari 1-0 win is actually a massive result. I mean, Empoli have been on great form, unbeaten in 6. They've been scoring goals for fun too, which you really don't say a lot about a team that's in a relegation fight. But I think to run away 1-0 victors away from home too, I think that's actually a massive result for Cagliari and for the Tinker man Claudio Ranieri.
That's right. Yeah, and Claudio Ranieri, a man who's very used to getting teams out of relegation zones. Who knows? Will Cagliari win the Serie A next year if they stay up? Remains to be seen, but that's about all I think we have for the Serie A this week.
Actually, real quick, I did want to shout out Hassan Kamara scored a world-class bicycle kick. Way better than Johan Wies's. If you get the chance, go check it out. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And with that, we'll move to Portugal, the maritime country where the oceans are blue and the capital is green, because we did have the first leg of the me and Jay battle, the Benfica Sporting duel. We'll have round 2 and 3 at the beginning of April, but round 1 did go to me, where Sporting hosted Benfica, and we got the job done. I think we were the better team for at least 60 minutes. Benfica, I think, I always say this, they love to wake up in the last half hour, and I think that's been a trend all season. I know I've told Jay that despite Benfica going forward, looking really good in most games, they typically look a little shaky at the back sometimes, and that was the case in the first half. I think if it wasn't for, I know Jay, I know you kind of agreed with me, but if it wasn't for Antonio Silva in that first half, I think there's potential that halftime we go in 2 or 3 goals up, and I mean, at that point the game would have almost been done and dusted. Obviously, only scoring a second around minute 60 still opened the door for Benfica to make a comeback, which they started to try to do. But I'll let you give your thoughts, Jay, before I continue. Obviously, Benfica not having a great weekend, but we'll get to that.
No, yeah, definitely a horror show this week. But yeah, pretty much summed it up. Sporting probably were the better team throughout most of the game. But yeah, Antonio Silva was fantastic against Gyökeres, and I think this week he kind of showed his age a bit in different ways. He did look a little shaky at times, but he's also the most athletic center back in the league and was able to keep up with Gyökeres and not allow him to do anything. And then on the other hand, Gyökeres goes and retires another center back legend in Portugal, and then skins Otamendi, skinned him. He hasn't been the same since, to be honest, because then he got sent off in the next game, which we'll talk about. And that's how they get the goal to win the game. But yeah, it's just another one of those things. We're overthinking it. I think the solution for Benfica is so obvious. It's so obvious in the way you set up the team. And again, we start this game with no real striker. You spent 50 million on strikers. Benfica does not spend money on players unless they're going to flip them for triple the money. So we have 55 million in strikers on the bench, and we don't play them. And yeah, it was just never going to work. We still have this fascination with João Mario being a 90-minute player when I don't even think he should be coming off the bench. I think Di Maria has been playing a bit too much, and he's struggling to play 90 minutes, and we're still playing him 90 minutes. So I think this game was kind of a culmination of a lot of stupid things we've been doing, and it really hasn't been addressed. And yeah, I think that the result was fair. One thing that I've always been trying to do is kind of be a bit more fair to referees in Portugal because of how awful Portuguese people are towards referees and all this stuff, the league, the media, everything. But man, was this one refereed poorly. I think there was a point, I forget the exact spot, but the game was gone after one little dust up.
Yeah.
And the referee lost control completely, and I think the game was ruined after that. So I think we could have came back, like Nate mentioned, like we usually play better at the end of games, but I think the game was unplayable for the last 20 minutes or so. So that was definitely an issue. Not to make an excuse, but I think it ruined a really good game because I think it started off really enjoyable to watch.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if you guys caught this one, Ange and G, but
I
yeah,
did.
this one was a tough one for me to watch.
For me, I have to say, like, I'd be lying to you if I said I watch Benfica week in and week out and like know everything that's going on there. But this game felt to me like almost like a microcosm of the season as a whole.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
You guys were very shaky at the back. You created some good chances to score. You didn't finish them, and then all of a sudden, when pretty much after it mattered is when you guys started showing up and really playing. And I feel like that's kind of been Benfica's season all year. I mean, that's how that pretty much sums up your Champions League campaign. I think that sums up you guys to this point in your league campaign. You guys obviously aren't first anymore, which I'm sure you'll get to. But I don't know. This Benfica team doesn't really convince me in comparison to the Benfica teams I've seen in the past.
Yeah, I mean, to your point with the referee thing, Jay, he had a bit of an attitude in this game. I don't know if he was trying to steal the show.
In general.
Yeah.
I think he's always like that.
And he is always like that. It seemed like he was trying to steal the show, dude. This is the Lisbon Derby. Like, just lock in, blow the whistle when you need to blow the whistle, and let the game play. Like, this game, Sporting Benfica, no matter how good either side are in the season, it's always a game that is just gonna run itself. The game is gonna be a fantastic game no matter the result. And I think he just needed to let that way. And I think, he lost the plot towards the end of the game.
Mm.
And there was a goal on either side that was disallowed. I mean, technically, rightfully so by offsides, but it's tough. I mean, there was a wonder goal. Nunes is just like a Puskas merchant, dude. That was unreal. Of course, I'm a little biased, and I want to say it wasn't offsides, but Paulinho starts in a position. He contests for the header that ends up falling to Nunes, but I mean, that goal is unreal. But yeah,
if the Di Maria goal was offsides, which is probably a little bit more questionable, that one 100% was offsides.
I mean, which one is questionable? I don't know. But yeah, you know what? I called it out at the beginning of the game when I first saw the lineups, because I mean, I did mention that it was interesting. I wasn't 100% sure. I kind of thought this might be a decent way to go up against Sporting, especially with Rafa Silva's speed against our relatively slower center backs. And I think that was on display a little bit, but Benfica really never got too much going forward until the last half hour or so. I mean, you guys ended the game with just exactly. You guys ended the game with just 6 shots to Sporting's 21. I mean, that's normally not something that you can say. Benfica typically the more offensive team. Sporting typically like to counter and defend. I did like that Ruben Amorim kind of changed up that narrative a little bit in this game.
I think the problem was we still played as if we had a striker, so we're sending in crosses to 5'5" Rafa Silva, and there is when he got in there a Kokchu, João Mario's never going to attack a header. So I mean, the whole game plan just made no sense. Like going forward, Di Maria was our tallest player, and that guy does not play physical at all.
Right.
So I mean, it was just incomprehensible. To be honest,
the 2 key battles you lost, maybe even 3, somewhat the midfield, which I was surprised. I just didn't think Kokchu put a good example of himself, and I definitely don't think he put a good example of himself in the Porto game, which we'll get to after this. But I think, and then João Mario just didn't play well. João Neves obviously was probably, besides Antonio Silva, the best player for Benfica on the pitch. Just never stopped working. But dude, when I saw Arsenis on left back, and I shout Arsenis out all the time. I think he's a fantastic player, super versatile, can play all over the pitch. But dude, he was getting burned by the combination of Geni Katemo and Marcus Edwards. That right side, Benfica, like of Sporting, Benfica's left side was the hole for Sporting's most of their attacks going forward. And while I think he's an excellent defender, he can't keep up with 2 players being extremely creative, extremely dynamic, and fast. He just couldn't deal with both of them. Not to mention Otamendi was having a poor game, so it's not like he was supporting him too much. And João Mario's on that side too. So that left side was a hole.
Muratu was a turnstile too.
Yeah.
I don't know how we made it to March now, and we do not have 2 true starting fullbacks in this team. We don't. We have a midfielder filling in. We have a left center back filling in.
Yeah.
We have Ba, who's occasionally healthy. We have a left back. We have a right back. Our right back can't stay healthy. Our left back, just for some reason, isn't favored by the coach.
Yeah.
So I don't get it. I can speak a bit more about that piece when we move on to the next game. But yeah, I will really quickly say Marcus Edwards embarrassed himself with that dive for a penalty. I don't know if you saw that. They went for a quick challenge, dude. He was about 3 yards away from him, and the referee called it. He gave a penalty. I was.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure he also did sportsmanship and said it wasn't a foul. I think he thought there was gonna be contact, and he did dive. Of course, I admit that. But then I think he realized that there was none, and then he did. I didn't see it myself, but I read that he did go to the ref and suggest that there was no foul there, and that was part of the reason they called it back. But yeah, I don't know if you had any thoughts. I don't know if you caught too much of the game, but I'll give you a floor before I transition.
Yeah, I did have a couple of thoughts actually. I'm glad you brought up the matchup of Katamo and Arsenis, because that was actually my takeaway from the game too. I don't know if Roger Smith tried to outthink Ruben Amorim, but I have a lot of questions to ask about the lineup, because I thought the same thing with Rafa Silva playing at striker. I don't know if he thought that Benfica was going to try to play in between the lines, and
it's only because it worked last game.
Limit what Sporting tries to do with their build-up play. But yeah, Katamo was great. I mean, he wasn't just burning Arsenis. I mean, he was up and down that right flank. I thought he was pretty impressive. Somebody that that was the first time I've seen him play this season. He obviously got an assist, and even Gyökeres's goal, it comes down that side.
Yeah.
I don't know what you thought, Jay, about the halftime substitution. I don't think Bob was injured. I know he hasn't been healthy, but what did you think? Did you see a change in tactics when he brought Muratu on? Did you like that he tried to change system? Because honestly, when I saw this 11, I thought to myself, They play Porto on the weekend, and then they have Rangers in the Europa League. I think Roger Schmidt just kind of saw this game a way of Sporting as if we can tie or just lose by a goal, it's best case scenario. I think that's what he got.
Yeah, I saw that too. I thought that
the lineup he played against Porto was a lot better than this one.
Yeah, because I think that was a reaction to a bad performance. To be honest,
gotcha.
This screams what Fernando Santos did for Portugal when that game where they start what's his name Gonçalo Ramos and he scores a hat trick. So now he has to start the next game, and it's like it worked last game. We scored 3 goals in 6 minutes, so it has to work the next game. When you're not adapting, you're playing the leader in the table. You're playing the best performing team in Portugal at the moment. You don't play when working.
You won't call them the best team. That's funny.
They're not the best team because I think we are the best, most talented team. I stand by that. But the only reason that I thought the same about Ba taking him out, but then he didn't play against Porto either.
Right.
So I'm assuming he's injured. But man, I just I don't know. It was tough. And then I don't know if we're ready to move on to the Porto game, but
go ahead.
I think then they went after a poor performance. You expect a rebound.
No.
And you go ahead and get Mollywopped 5-0 to Porto. And again, a little bit of a makeshift lineup. I wouldn't say that, but I mean, I think Arthur Cabral had gone through such a good patch of form where after he had been terrible, and for no reason, stopped playing him. And I think the team started to click with him finally, and then throwing him in off the bench, he's basically useless. So I mean,
too little, too late.
Exactly, and I think you have a player in Cabral he's a starter. Like you can't bring him off the bench; he doesn't work that way. Whereas like a Marcos Leonardo works off the bench, which surprise, surprise, the guy has been missing for 3 games straight for no reason. So yeah, it's just so many things that are so obvious. Like to me, the obvious fix is to play your real fullbacks. Murato should never see the field again as a left back. Like never. He has been. I think he lost 10 duels in the first half of that game, and not playing Florentino in this game or the last 6 games, I think is a crime. João Mari, one of the worst players on the field, and he played 90 minutes.
Sounds like Roger Schmidt is just a serial overthinker at this point.
Yeah, I think so. It's like there's so many things that like it's so obvious. Like play Florentino, play a 6. We don't play with a 6.
Yeah.
We have a 6, an 8, and a 10. Perfect. Exactly what we need in João Neves, Kokshu, and Florentino. They won't play there.
Yeah.
We don't play a 6 for some reason, even though we're getting run over midfield because João Mario can't defend. You have Neves again. Hard to find a bright spot in this performance. The guy ran back, chipped the forward that was pressing him in his own box, and then cleared it like with no fear whatsoever. The kid's unbelievable. But yeah, just a terrible showing. And then really embarrassing. I don't know if you guys have found this. Our admin for social media stopped tweeting midway through the game. So he posted the 4-0 that we were losing. Didn't post a 5-0. Didn't post anything for 3 days. Just shut down the account for 3 days. And then today they just post the preview for the Rangers game. And it's just like, wow, that was bad. So we're getting clowned a lot there. But I don't know. I think
it's got to be pretty embarrassing too to lose in this way. I mean, this Porto team has been very far off what they have been in the past, and to lose like that in this fashion, I think it's pretty embarrassing. Actually, if you're a Benfica fan.
Yeah, I mean, I will shout them out. They played very well. They got performances from players that haven't been up to par this season. But then like this kid, they signed this kid Otavio, 21 years old. I think he's 21, but from a mid-table team in Portugal, and slots in. Great game in the Champions League. Great game against Benfica. Like that's what you have to do. You make changes when things aren't working.
Yep.
And I mentioned about Otamendi after that Gyökeres thing, basically retired him. He comes in, gets skinned, and then terrible pass and takes out a player on a breakaway and gets sent off, second yellow. And I think that was just a frustration foul. And it's just culminating of our season, just how bad we're shooting ourselves in the foot. And I think he's really fallen off this year.
Are you worried?
Yeah.
Going into
Am
the
I
Rangers
worried?
game?
Yeah. The only way I wouldn't be worried is if we made the obvious changes. If we played two fullbacks, if we start Florentino, which, by the way, he's been with Benfica for about 6 years. When he starts as a perennial starter, we've won the league. When he has been on the bench, we don't win the league. And it's pretty clear that that type of player is what we're missing. But yeah, if we don't make the obvious changes, play two real fullbacks, play a real striker, make a real midfield, maybe drop Di Maria, which, again, sits up in the air. He's still been okay. But João Mario shouldn't see the field this game. He has been awful for 3 games straight. And for some reason, he's played 90 minutes in both of them. So yeah, I just like us to get back to a real team and stop trying to do these stupid things that are like wicked creative. When you play your center backs where they belong, you play your wingers where they belong, you play your striker where they belong, you play your fullback where they belong, and we'll do well. But for some reason, we just haven't been able to do that.
And you know what, dude, honestly, for me, I always had questions for Roger Schmidt. You would always have a counterpoint for me. But, dude, I'm telling you, like, he's just...
I got nothing.
He's Dustin. I think it's a blessing in disguise that his contract runs out in the summer for Benfica. I had mentioned, I think, either in group chat or even on the pod, that maybe if Benfica win the league, maybe he gets an extension or goes to a big club. But, dude, you're ending the league with a team that obviously has the capacity to win the league, that has the capacity to go far in the Europa League in terms of talent, and you're just getting smoked tactically. Dude, you start Austin on the left side against Sporting, gets dusted, right? Then you pull out Ba, who I'm not going to tell you was the best defender on the field, but he wasn't necessarily getting absolutely burnt. He'd lose a couple battles, win a couple battles against Pedro Gonçalves. We weren't really attacking through that side until later on in the game in the sense. And then now he's like, all right, let me look at Port. Who's their best best player going forward right now is the man in form, Galeno, who scores 2 and gets an assist in this game. Puts him on the safe side, gets dusted again. I love Auschwitz. I think he's a great player, but he's not an out-and-out defender. He's not the player that you need on
out of position.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. He's not the player that you should be putting on the side that you're going to be defending more on, because he's going to get exposed. And it's just silly. Tactically, this doesn't make any sense. And then, like you said, dude, I'm not even Artur Cabral's biggest. I think he sucks. But, like, you have him in games. The teams have been kind of clicking with him. He's getting the ball in the back of the net occasionally, like often enough to keep a spot. And then you come against the two hardest games in back-to-back, and you're like, I'm not going to play him for either. And I'm also not going to sub in the man who's the super sub of the season for you.
Yeah,
it just doesn't make any sense. There's no like rhyme or reason about it. It's like he's overthinking everything. Every time I see him on the bench, he's always just looking like this.
Yeah, that's super
acting. Oh my god, that face pisses me off. But like acting like he's thinking about something, but what he's thinking isn't working. I don't understand.
And it's crazy because I was the first one to say we need to rotate.
Right.
But you don't rotate the players that are in form.
Right.
You rotate the other players and get them in. Like if Artur Cabral scores 3 games in a row, right? You don't take him out that fourth. You give him that fourth game as another shot. If he doesn't score that, then you go through the rotation. But he was on fire. He was playing great, and the bench doesn't play for 3 games. So it's like you can't do that.
Like the Vitória Guimarães game, you can say like whatever, like it's a little bit of rotation. Vitória Guimarães are levels below Benfica, so let's try something different in case I ever have to change it up because of injuries in the weather, whatever. And then you're like, okay, I play Sporting, Benfica, and a Europa League game back to back. What am I gonna do? Change my tactics completely. Specifically against Sporting, it's a cup game, dude. You should practice for the Porto game. You should set up how you kind of would set up against Porto. Look to get a result against Sporting. Obviously, it's a derby. You want to take it seriously. But, like, you should really be worried about this league result because that's where your competition really matters. Nobody cares about this cup. I'd love to win it, whatever. It's a piece of, but nobody cares. We're worried about the league, and now Sporting go a point above Benfica at the weekend with a game at hand. A hypothetical 3 points puts us 4 points clear, and that's a long road to. We only have 10 games left, and in the Portuguese league, when we don't have that many big games, there's only a couple. 4 points is a lot in the last couple games of the season. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. Roger Schmidt is going to be hard pressed to find a good job this summer.
I'm not huge into like the big Portuguese league conspiracies because there's a new one every week.
Right.
But there is something to be said about the way Schmidt has been treated by Portuguese reporters. About a quarter of the way through the season, they just decided we're not speaking to him in English anymore. Like, we're just going to disrespect them, and it's going to be in Portuguese, and you're going to have to get a translator. And there's been the way they've been asking some of the questions have been pretty like critical of him specifically. And I don't think a lot of the other coaches will get the same type of treatment. But not to say that it's an excuse, but I also think it goes to show. I think that's probably affecting him, and that's more of a flaw in him. I mean, Portuguese media is what it is. They're awful, but yeah, I feel like he no longer feels welcome at the club, in the league, in the country, and I think it's really affecting him. He's doing a lot of weird stuff that he shouldn't be, and I just wish he could just shut out the noise and just do what he did last season, because last season was the best Benfica team I've seen in years, and this squad is better.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
If I'm a Benfica fan, the thing that's most worrying for me about Roger Schmidt is like, I feel like you complain about the same issues with Benfica every week,
right.
and these issues kind of seem almost blatantly obvious at this point, and he still doesn't do anything about them at all.
Tell me why I've seen when you see fans putting up lineups and all this stuff, it's always something crazy. Tell me why they're all the same, and they're so obvious, and they've never been played in one game together.
Yeah.
All it is real fullbacks, the real midfield, the real striker. That's all it is, and it hasn't been played yet this season.
It doesn't take a rocket scientist to put that lineup together either.
No, it takes a regular fan to watch the game.
Yeah. I think Florentino Luis he's not necessarily a world beater. He's not necessarily a club that's on big club radars, but he's a consistent player that wins the ball, that breaks up a lot of attacks. So I think he's a vital instrument.
Yeah. He's the type of midfielder that you need.
Right.
Yeah.
He's not the type of player who's going to get the credit, but he's going to win the 50-50 battles and recover possession in a way that a lot of players are just not willing to do anymore.
Yeah, because now João Neves has been having to do all that, and that's not the type of player he is, but he'll do whatever he wants.
It probably hinders his influence on the other side of the field when he has to do that extra work.
A lot of the Mainu Casemiro type partnership where you need that player next to him to kind of anchor him and take care of the dirty work and let him be him.
Right.
And he hasn't been able to do that the last few games, and I think he's been struggling.
Yeah. But we'll wrap up Portugal. Porto have Arsenal looking up this week. So this weekend they did a training match instead of an actual match. All jokes aside, they smoked Benfica. Just had a little banter with Jay. It was a rough weekend for him. Benfica don't always have rough weekends, so had to stick it to him. The other Sporting game, Sporting obviously played in the league. They had a 3-2. On paper looks like a scrappy game. They just scored. One was a unworldly goal. It was a fantastic strike by this younger kid, Belloumi, Algerian. He looks like a real talent. I looked a couple of highlights. He has some good moments this game, so he's a potential transfer this summer. And then they scored on a set piece by one of their better players, Zé Luiz, who's just an absolute physical presence. But Sporting really had the domination of the possession and the chances. We just couldn't finish, and then they scored a worldie and a set piece. So it was more comfortable than it looked. So Sporting take the lead on the table. Braga had an excellent game this weekend, where they won 3-0. The only thing I really wanted to mention from this game is actually, I don't even think he played this game, but Alvaro Jallo, actually he did get subbed in. Pretty cool. I've seen him pop up in a couple games that I've watched, and he gets these moments of brilliance. He's going to Atletico Bilbao because he did grow up in the Basque region of Spain. Bilbao, a club that we've talked about a lot, doesn't do too many transfers because of their strict transfer policy, but he does come from that region, so he will be going there for 15 million in the summer. So that was a pretty cool thing that happened this weekend. And then the last of the big teams, Vitória Guimarães also got a 3-1 win this weekend. So outside of Benfica, the big five, we'll call them right now, all got wins. Benfica having a nightmare weekend. They will look to obviously change that. We'll talk about them later this week. Make sure you catch that European episode when it drops, probably Friday or Saturday. Keep your eye out for it.
Shit or not.
See if, you know what? We'll see. Because Jay was talking about the mental battle between Sporting and Benfica. Benfica right now have lost that battle.
Yeah, you guys won that, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we'll see how that goes. As we do, we'll move on to a couple different countries in Europe. La Liga had a couple interesting results. I'm going to quickly pass through one. We're going to get to the one game in particular that was of interest this weekend. But Sevilla beat Real Sociedad, continued to climb. It was a 3-2 win. We also saw Atletico Madrid beat Betis They've really kind of Atletico Madrid, despite being somewhat poor in a lot of occasions, we've talked about them, have kind of stamped their place in fourth. I mean, their size and talent, they should be there, so it's nothing to write home about. But they are doing that well. Girona, unfortunately, continued to struggle after that test that we talked about against Real Madrid. They lose again. It's unfortunate, but I think they'll still have a respectable finish in the table. I don't know if you guys agree with me. I think the title was never on the cards. It was never on anyone's bingo card. Yeah. Definitely not the president's or anybody's. So I think just take it as is. The fans should be happy of what they achieved thus far, and just enjoy the season as it continues, because a couple of transfers away from going back right down to a relegation scrap potentially. So enjoy it.
It looks like they're pretty much going to guarantee Champions League football next year, because it's a pretty
monumental achievement for that club.
9 points. I mean, regardless, they're in Europe, but I think Champions League is looking very, very likely for them, which is huge.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be either huge for money wise, or it could be devastate them next season if they can't keep the squad depth. So it's going to be an interesting one to see. But in terms of accomplishment, I agree. It's going to be definitely a big one for them. And then one more game before we get to the showpiece game in terms of drama. Let's go Bilbao. We just talked about held Barcelona to a 0-0 draw. Bilbao, obviously a team that we highlight as like doing some awesome business. The fact that they've never been relegated in La Liga against a Barcelona that are just absolutely lackluster resulted in an unexciting game, in my opinion. I believe we all feel the same.
I wanted to say a couple of things too, real quick. Sevilla, I just wanted to say, I think it's a real credit to their players and their manager that the turnaround that they've made this season in the last few weeks has been actually astounding. I mean, they were flirting with relegation for the first 10 to 11 weeks of the season. And I mean, last week they went toe-to-toe with Real Madrid. They got a huge win at home. And to be honest with you, it's been pretty hostile for them playing at home with the atmosphere because they've been struggling. So to get a result against Sociedad, who've been very good this season, even though they've been kind of struggling lately. And we did see them go out of the Champions League today too, which is kind of unfortunate for them, but I think it's a great result for Sevilla. But I think the Barcelona game, this game is going to have massive implications on not just they're standing in the table right now, but I think for the next couple weeks they have some important games coming up. De Jong and Pedri both left in the first half of this game injured. Pedri left the field in tears. It's looking like they're both going to be out a month, but that does mean they're going to miss the Champions League against Napoli, the return leg in Barcelona, which is huge in my opinion. I mean, they're already lacking a lot of players in midfield, and I mean, Pedri and De Jong, those are the two most influential players in their midfield, and they're going to lose so much creativity and so much just grit and determination in that midfield now. Yep. They're already without Gavi. They have Christensen filling in that role, which, in my opinion, he offers you nothing creatively. I mean, basically nothing going forward at all. He's there to defend and keep the midfield solid, and other than that, I mean, he's just taking up space. And it's really hard for me to take positives away watching Barcelona after this game. I mean, it was a pretty shit game overall. Not really any great chances. The only bright thing is like Lamine Yamal, 16 years old. This kid has consistently been the best player in this Barcelona team by a mile. Every week he shows up, he plays 100 miles an hour. He's taking players on. He's making things happen. He's having efforts at goal. He's hitting the post. And it's really, really sad to me that this is the state of Barcelona, that a 16-year-old is their best player and shows the most Barcelona identity and most determination to be on the field. It's kind of disappointing, I think.
It's a situation similar to Manchester United. I can't say that there's a 16-year-old that is the best for Manchester United, but what I can say is that similar to United, Barcelona's had to rely on some of these young players, and it's Pedri with another injury. I mean, how poorly has this kid's career been managed by Barcelona, even Spain? I mean, there's always that meme flying around of him with bags under his eyes before kickoff, I think, in a meaningless Nations League game where they're relying on Pedri again. Spain's national team, that is, and it's just awful. I'm honestly not even surprised he's injured again. And I think it was just last podcast that I was on that I was talking about how I've been kind of worried about his future and Gavi's future, and it seems like they can never get Pedri, De Jong, and Gavi on the field together, the trio that I think their future kind of rests on. But I don't really want to say anything else about Barca. I actually really want to hype up Atletico Bilbao. I don't know if you guys saw, but they had an awesome result in the Copa del Rey. They're going to the final. They beat Atletico Madrid at home 3-0. It was the Williams brothers assisting each other. It looks like Bilbao are going to ride off into the sunset, and they take on Mallorca in the Copa del Rey, so they'll be heavy favorites for it. I'm excited. I hope they get a trophy. I think a lot of people support Bilbao, just like you said, Nate. I mean, just their transfer policy, and I think the Williams brothers turning up there is such a feel-good story, and they scored a couple great goals assisting each other, and I even
Did you see the picture of them with their siblings after?
picture of them with their family. There's like 8 or 9 Williams siblings. I mean, they got a couple
young brothers coming.
They got a couple young brothers that are still in incubators that might be turning up for Bilbao too. It'd be crazy if they could field like 4 or 5 of them at the same time. But yeah, pretty cool. I thought that was a pretty cool result. It's good times to be a Bilbao fan. And you brought up the Atletico Madrid result too. And even the Girona result. I mean, the Athletic Club are keeping up with these teams in the league, and I'd be worried if I were Girona. I know there's a 9-point gap, but I mean, there's a lot of football to be played. There's still 11 games to go. I wouldn't be surprised if Girona or Atletico Madrid found themselves in 5th with the way Bilbao has been playing. But we'll see. I can't say I follow La Liga too much, but those were a couple fixtures I had my eyes on. I wanted to make sure we gave Bilbao their flowers.
And interesting, it's the man at the helm of Bilbao is Ernesto Valverde, who completely
Barcelona, right?
Yeah,
he was made a fool of by the Barcelona faithful.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's pretty funny that they're now doing so well underneath the same man who supposedly ruined Barcelona. But I think, as we can see, that there were larger underlying problems than the coach.
Yeah, I mean, I would hate to see, like you were saying, just some of these young players just getting absolutely run to the dirt before their careers have even started. It really is terrible. I know people talk about fixture congestion, but sometimes you rotate and then they just chose not to, and they just get run into the ground. It's terrible.
Yeah. And that's my biggest issue with the fixture congestion argument, saying that there's so many, we have too many games. Nobody's telling you got to play your players 80 games a year. That's on the coach. You got to do better at that. It's on the clubs to have full squads that can play. You shouldn't be playing 11 guys every game for an entire season. That's why you have squads. You got to rotate.
It's not modern football anymore.
Right.
You don't have the guy that's going to be there every game. Give a little bit of rotation. Yeah. Nobody has to play all games in a season. And I think it's for Barca's prime example. Their best academy players to come since Messi, Xavi, all them, ruined. Their careers are probably never going to reach the heights that we expect because they've been playing so much.
Dude, and imagine Pedri, Gavi, I mean, even Yamal now, like, not that they're going to be Messi, Iniesta, and Xavi, but they have, like, that ceiling. Do you know what I mean? Like, they have, top-tier quality. You're playing in a Barca side and contending for Champions Leagues at the under the age of 18. I mean, that's unreal. Do you know what I mean? And you're just going to
Gavi and Pedri should have been Xavi and Iniesta.
Right.
That's who they should be. They should be this generation, Xavi and Iniesta.
And they're going to stunt that this, right?
It looks like they're not going to be able to get there because
of
this.
Right. But yeah, Atletico Bilbao, it's a cool story, right? Because imagine if every club only used players from their region. I mean, it would give youngsters a more opportunity. You know what I mean? So it's
Man City would be fun,
right? City apparently would still be fun.
Benfica in Sporting would probably be very good.
There are a lot of good Lisbon players, absolutely. Really quick, if there's something you guys out there want to watch that was awesome in La Liga, the Willy Carvalho goal against Atletico Madrid was a screamer. Yeah, he's not one.
That one I forgot about. Honestly,
he's not.
William Carvalho even existed until this weekend.
He is
dropped off the face of the earth.
He is not a shooter by any means, but boy, was that a shot and a half.
Banger.
But one more game with unreal controversy, and I'm interested in how you guys feel about it and how you feel about the whole, like, when refs should blow the whistle, whatnot. It was the Real Madrid game. By all accounts, it wasn't their best performance by any means. Vinny did get a brace. They did not play well against Valencia. Valencia held them to a 2-2 draw. However, Real Madrid, in their fashion, started to pick up late into the game. I don't remember the exact minute, but it was into the 90-plus, obviously, because the game did end at this point. But they went into transition, broke down the line, had a ball cleared on the first attempt in, but then broke just outside the box and whipped in a cross. And while the cross is practically in the air into the box, the ref blows the final whistle, and in which Real Madrid actually managed to then shoot the ball and put the ball in the back of the net, which is unreal. And players are obviously in arms. There's a red card shown to star boy Jude Bellingham, who obviously was rightfully upset. And I just can't fathom. I understand that, there's extra time and we need to play 90 minutes, whatever, but this is this is a sport. It's supposed to be about entertainment. The ball is practically inside the penalty box. That's the most dangerous position on the field, and you're going to tell me that's when you should end the game because the possession is dead or something? I don't know how you guys feel about that, but listen, my biases aside, because I like Real Madrid. Dude, if any team's in that position, you do not put that whistle in your mouth. Never mind, blow it. I don't understand.
Now, for me, my takeaway was that the sequence of play was a corner kick where the first ball gets played into the box, cleared out to Brahim on the wing. In every other game of soccer I've ever seen in my life, when there's a corner kick in the last, basically made that it's going to be the last play of the game.
Right.
As soon as the defender makes contact with that ball and it's up in the air, the referee puts the whistle to his mouth and blows full time.
Okay.
Right.
In this game, the referee does that. He puts the whistle to his mouth and then he hesitates.
Right.
Why he hesitates? I think only he's going to know the answer to that question. But to hesitate and then think, okay, now let me blow the whistle after the ball is already dropped to Brahim's feet and he's about to play the cross in, you just can't do that.
It was in the air when he blew it.
Right.
The ball was in the air, it was in the air. You can't do that, and you can't say he wasn't looking in that direction because he's very clearly watching the entire sequence of play. So it's just I had when I watched that happen live, I was my jaw was on the floor. I could not believe what I was seeing because it looked fake. It looked like something out of a movie, honestly, that the referee blew the whistle like that.
Yeah, the worst part is you get the minimum. The added time is a minimum. They put whatever the number is.
Right.
There was a 2.5 minute VAR review in extra time, in added time, and then only an extra minute or so was played.
Right.
So I don't get it's not even I know they're over the allotted time, but there was another stoppage within stoppage time.
A lengthy stoppage, not just something simple.
Lengthy stoppage. Yeah, it wasn't
not just a wasting couple of seconds. It was a long break. Yeah, you're right.
Right.
And then to still blow it less than we didn't play whatever the minimum was at all. So I think that alone, it not even forget the fact of when it was kicked. That wasn't even enough time to begin with. We were still about 30, 45 seconds away from when you should consider blowing the whistle. Right. And a ball in midair into the box, the whistle should never be blown. I know you can say whatever, time is time, but in this case, it doesn't even matter. But never, if the ball is in air on the way into the box, should the whistle be blown.
Right.
Yeah, I agree totally. I think what he got, like Gianluca said, I think what the referee got wrong was not saying to the players, this will be the last kick of the game. We've watched a lot of football.
Right.
That is usually what the referees do. It usually is announced on field, just so you guys know, this ball will be the last ball played in the air. That being said, I actually enjoyed watching it. I'm glad it happened to Real Madrid. I'm glad they're on the receiving end of an awful refereeing decision. I thought it was ludicrous and criminal what they did, or how they won the game against Almeria. I think this is karma shaking itself out, in my opinion. Yeah. I actually didn't really care that it happened to Real Madrid. The only thing that sucked is that Girona failed to take advantage. That would have been the cherry on top. But I wasn't too displeased to see that happen to Real Madrid personally.
No, and I think it's also better that it's not really going to have that much of an impact on the title race.
Right. Because if this was a 1 point gap or something.
But if this is a game where Girona all of a sudden goes to first, then it's okay.
Yeah.
Now there's a big issue.
Right. Yeah, I think the worst part was the fact that he didn't blow the whistle when the clearance was made and then decided to blow it after they had already restarted the counterattack, which is unreal.
Shades of the what's it called, AFCON 2 years ago.
Yeah. And this same thing had happened to what was it, Sevilla, I think, last year or a few years back, where they were shooting and the ball was literally traveling to the net.
And
the ref turned around and just blew.
I think it was outside the box shot, and I think he was a bit more apologetic about it too. Where this guy was just like,
"Oh yeah, he stuck by it." Right.
Yeah, he was like, Yeah, because I mean, you do the same thing with advantage, where like a referee will stop an advantage to be like, "Oh crap, my bad." No apology
Oh yeah,
whatsoever.
no, he refed that like he did the right
He
thing.
was like,
Just
"No,
Oh yeah,
that's
he
what he
owned
needs
it.
to do."
He owned it.
game. He refed that like that was the right thing to do.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And then quickly we'll move to Germany, where it was mildly uneventful in terms of moving in the table, but Bayern dropping points again, not making any sort of name for themselves in terms of coming back up the table to try to win the league out of Leverkusen's hands, who Leverkusen themselves had a shutout away to Köln, where they won 2-0. Another display of their fullbacks. Obviously, Grimaldo, we've been talking about Grimaldo and Frimpong as some of the key positions in that team, and they demonstrated week in, week out, and it was no different in this game.
must be nice to have a fullback.
Yeah, you guys let him go on a free too. Would you look at that? It's almost like
Yep.
the story writes itself, doesn't it, Jay?
Mm-hmm.
And then we did see both, all three of Stuttgart, Dortmund, and Frankfurt get 3 points at the weekend, all playing away, actually. All good results for them. Don't think that has too many implications, like I said. Yeah, Stuttgart remained third. Dortmund remain fourth. They're going to be hoping to hold on to that Champions League spot as Leipzig don't play all that well and have been a bit sloppy and just a bit lackluster. I don't know if anybody had any key thoughts on the Bundesliga this weekend before we move.
Yeah, well, first off, I just want to say, did you guys see the own goal in the Eintracht Frankfurt game? Because it
No.
was all-time world class. I
Oh,
mean,
man.
you couldn't write you. It was cartoonish. I mean, the guy. It's just a simple back pass to the goalie, and I mean, the ball couldn't have it couldn't have taken a bad bounce at a more better time. I mean, it just hits a perfect divot right in the grass. Goalkeeper whiffs the clearance completely,
Oh.
goes right in the net. I mean, it was classic. It was just comedy. I was laughing out loud watching it.
That's because I actually had Kevin Trapp lined up in my so rare lineup, so those things tend to happen in the games that I need things to go well in. That makes sense. Wish you didn't even say that.
Other than that, I think for me, my biggest takeaway from the Bundesliga is another week of Sancho struggles. I mean, it's another game where you expect him to have an impact. I mean, Union Berlin have not been the side that they have been in the past couple of seasons in the Bundesliga. It was a result. I know Dortmund's on the road, but I expected them to play well and to be on the front foot for most of the game. And to be quite honest with you, I'm just disappointed in the lack of influence Sancho's having on these games. I think you really hit the nail on the head last week when you said that he won his battle just by showing up in that first game, Jay. I think that was exactly what it is, because I mean, it looks like he has no motivation to even be a professional footballer at this point. I think he's just happy to collect that check at the end of every week and just keep bringing the money into his pockets. And I think if you're a United fan too, like, what do you do with him? I mean, if Dortmund take him back after the performance he's been putting in, I think that's shocking. I don't think that's good business at all for their standpoint. He's obviously not going to go back and have a place in Ten Hag's United, and his performances are not making a case for him to be sold at any fraction of the fee that they paid for him. They're almost better off terminating his contract and letting him go for free at this point.
Yep.
Because I mean, it's just all around getting worse and worse, and I really hate to knock him because I thoroughly enjoyed Sancho a lot when he was at Dortmund in his first tenure, and going to United, I really wanted to see him do good things and perform well. I think he was the type of player that really United lacked, and I think he could have provided a real spark. But it really, like, I want to know what his deal is. Like, I would love to just sit down and talk to him and be like, yo, like, what are you thinking about, dude? Like, what is going on here? Like I would just love to sit in his mind for like an hour and just see what's going on, because it doesn't seem like there's really much of anything going on up there right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Jay.
I was just going to say, for me, my takeaway from Bundesliga this week is just like, it's finally going to happen where Bayern is just not.
Yeah.
It's just, it's pretty much done and dusted now. A 10-point lead with, what do we got? 10 to go. I don't see that happening. And I mean, this 4-game run for Bayern of 1 win and 4 got to be probably up there with their worst run of 4 games in probably 10, 15 years, if not more.
The worst run I've ever seen them on in my lifetime.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to discredit anything Leverkusen's doing by mentioning like how bad Bayern have been, but yeah, they've been awful, and I'm glad that there's an actual challenger to pounce on that opportunity to win the league this year.
Yeah, I think Bayern had a weekend similar to Benfica, similar to Manchester United, where all the teams around them one, I guess it was a bad weekend for the teams in red, because even in the Bundesliga, I mean, if you look at the fixtures, everyone around them won all the way down to seventh place Hoffenheim. So just an awful weekend for Bayern, awful weekend for United. But yeah, as far as Bayern's concerned, I mean, I struggle to understand why they even kept Tuchel in the job. I mean, I just feel like if you're a player in a locker room who hears that your coach is gone at the end of the season, no matter how well you do, I mean, I'm not sure how motivated I would be to show up and give it my all if it's not a Champions League night like we saw tonight. On the day of recording against Lazio. I mean, that was certainly the most inspired I've seen Bayern play the last couple weeks. I mean, they've been terrible in the Bundesliga, and how can you blame them? I just think, whether or not we think the Thomas Tuchel hiring was wrong, and I think it's harsh to say that it was wrong, I still don't think Tuchel is that bad of a manager as people think. I understand some of the decisions he's making on the surface level are questionable. But at the end of the day, I mean, you're professional footballers too. Like, I don't think Tuchel is all to blame, but I don't know. I think Bayern in the future will be fine. They're going to win the league next season. Everybody should calm down. But yeah, it's going to be refreshing, I think, to see Leverkusen lift it this year.
Yeah, and I think it's a case of, like you said, Ange. I think you're right that it's not Tuchel being a bad manager. It's just not a good fit. They don't blend.
No.
The two don't blend together. The squad is not a Tuchel squad. There's talent in the team.
You can tell they don't want to play his way.
Yeah,
No.
there's talent in the team. It's just not being put on display. But I think that just about wraps everything up. We will now finish with our segment as we do every week, where we highlight all the best players. We've mentioned quite a few already. I know Ange has a strong pick for midfield, so I might have a little bit of an argument for that, depending on where you see this player positions. But we'll start always with our five-a-side team, with our goalkeeper position, where our goalkeeper resident G will give us his shout, and we'll either agree or disagree.
That's right. Pretty quiet week, I think, this week in the goalkeeper department. Not too many standout performances. I do think there is one though. Alphonse Areola was brilliant for West Ham.
Yeah.
Saved the penalty, made 9 saves in the game against Everton. So I think it's a pretty easy shout for me. I really don't even have a second one, to be quite honest with you. Usually I come to you guys with 2 or 3, but this week I just have Areola for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think a keeper that made a good account of himself, Ange mentioned earlier, was Andre Onana, and I know you had agreed, but conceding 3 doesn't put your name on any top list of goalkeepers for the weekend, so I think Areola.
He was good, but I still have more questions
right.
about Onana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's an easy choice for that one. Defender, maybe I'll give it to Jay if he has a name, or if anybody has a name to throw out. Off the top of my head, I can't think of one.
I'll give a shout to really any Leverkusen fullback, but
Yeah,
right.
And that's exactly what I was going to say too. It's
how much
it's
of
so
a need
basic.
we have for him.
It's so basic to include Grimaldo again in a five-a-side, but dude, I mean, if the Ballon d'Or was fair, he could win it. To be honest, but
Yeah, he should definitely be a consideration for Bundesliga player this season.
He's been unbelievable.
Man,
it's outrageous if he's not.
Just look at. I mean, I know the match ratings on FotMob can be skewed and they're not really accurate performance, but it just lights up green and blue. You don't get blues like that. And if you look at stuff like that, it's like this. He's been outstanding for that team. He's just a perfect fit for that system. So yeah, I'll throw him in as my defender pick.
Yeah, it's a good shout. I mean, getting a goal obviously at the weekend. And you know what? It's worthy too, because essentially week in, week out, every time we talk about Leverkusen, his name gets mentioned. It's like it just happens every single week. So it's criminal that he hasn't entered this five-a-side up until now. So it's a good as week as any to do it. And midfield shout, Ange, I know you want to say Foden, which I agree. I think he had a fantastic performance, but I think one of the games of the weekend, Galeno, depending on where you classify him as, whether a midfielder or forward, he does play in that left wing position, left attacking mid. He does get 2 goals and assists on a day, so I think those 2 are in strong contention. I don't know if anybody else has any other names, or if Ange, you want to make your argument for Foden.
I think Galeno classifies more as a forward. Well, if there was another name I wanted to throw out there, I would say Pellegrini. I think he's been superb the last 4 or 5 weeks now. We haven't really given him his flowers. I know myself and Angela have talked about him, but I think he deserves a shout for the five-a-side.
Yeah, definitely a shout, but I'm not putting him in the team personally.
Manchester Derby.
Yeah, I think there was a
As a
couple
performance.
better performances in bigger games, and yeah, I will defend Phil Foden because I thought he was the best player on the field. I mean, he was buzzing around. I think he was making the things or everything tick this time around, and not Kevin De Bruyne, which is such a luxury to have. It's absolutely disgusting to think about. But yeah, Foden. I thought Foden was the best player I watched this weekend. I'm fine putting Galeno at forward or in the flex spot, but I think both of them have to be in this team. I'll say that.
Yeah, I have to agree. Depending on where you classify them, I will give Foden the edge as he is more of a true midfielder, and then, like you said, outshining KDB in a Manchester derby is insane. Another name I want to throw out there, we didn't mention this game at all. It's a little bit of a less interesting game, but actually, everybody will know him. Daniel Parejo had 3 assists at the weekend against Granada in a 5-1 victory, so that's a pretty impressive feat. But I'm good with sticking Foden in the midfield position.
Yeah, I like it.
As far as forwards go, I don't know if we're going to classify Galeno as a forward. Obviously, if we do, he's definitely a shout. But we had a couple good forward performances this weekend. I don't know if you guys want to. I think G's going to say a Roma player most likely, but I would
actually
also,
no, I'm not.
Oh, then
I'm going to shout. I'm going to shout Ollie Watkins. He's up to 26 goals and assists on the season, most in the Premier League. So 2 goals this weekend. I think it's a pretty good shout for me.
I'm a Premier League player too, actually. Somebody similar to Galeno, similar to Foden, and that I'm not really sure if he's a forward or a midfielder. But Kai Havertz. It's been a Kai Havertz coming out party the past couple weeks. I think he's been contributing well in Arsenal's big wins, albeit me not being totally impressed by these wins. But I think Kai Havertz was praised a lot in the media afterwards. He had a goal and assist. I don't know if I would say he was the best player. He did get the Man of the Match award, but I kind of felt like we should have an Arsenal player in here, and if it's any of them, I wouldn't mind seeing Kai Havertz fill in the forward spot.
And we didn't really mention it when we talked about the game, but what's his name? I just forgot it. William Saliba had more passes himself than all of Sheffield.
Yeah.
So I think that was pretty impressive, and on top of the clean sheet. So I think there should be some Arsenal representation in there. Whether we want to throw it in forward as a flex or forward, I'm good with either of them, to be honest.
That might be one of the craziest stats I've heard this season.
Yeah, that is
honestly. A defender. Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of how Arsenal play too, playing at the back. It's a bit of a modern football. Control the ball. Just keep it swinging back and forth.
The entire team is unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is crazy.
I think another shout that's worth mentioning. We didn't go too in deep on the Bundesliga this weekend, but Guirassy is coming back in for his second or third game starting after injury or / the AFCON. He did bang a brace at the weekend, which was essential as they only squeaked a 3-2 win over Wolfsburg. So that's another decent shout.
Yeah. He's up to 20 goals on the season now in 18 games, which is actually really, really impressive.
Yeah, so that was.
I mean, if Harry Kane's not in the Bundesliga, it's the Sarah Guirassy League.
Right.
Because he would be essentially the top scorer in every league if it wasn't for Harry Kane.
Yeah, I mean, he's a man in form for sure. So it's a difficult conversation. I guess I'll narrow it down to 3 for you guys. I like the Kai Havertz shout because playing a bit out of position, more as the focal point of that attack rather than being like maybe playing off it like a 10. That's a difficult thing to do, and then to do so and then get actually 2 goal contributions in back-to-back games. So that's definitely one shout of the final 3 that I'll give you guys. I like Guirassy. I know I mentioned it myself, but a brace on the day to really inspire your team to a victory, to a narrow victory when they really needed it. And the final shout would be, I think, Galeno, if we're going to make him a forward for the weekend. Obviously, 3 goal contributions into the thumping of Benfica, which is no easy feat by any means. So I'll let you guys take a vote on that one.
Yeah, I think we can round it out with a 2-pronged attack of Kai Havertz and Galeno. I like the sound of that.
I really like the Havertz shout because he's doing. It's funny because he's doing exactly what Chelsea wanted him to do: play that false 9 role and do it effectively. And they just could not seem to get that out of him.
I believe it's the first time Arteta's asked him to play that role this season too. So
he's doing it very, very well.
It's even more credit to the system he's been able to build. So.
And on top of all the abuse he's gotten,
right, especially during that Chelsea stint too.
Yeah. So I think that's I like that show.
Come on.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, and I like because that instantly clears our flex position. So I like that shout completely. That was solid. So we will go. Our final five was Areola in net. We chose to do. Oh my God, who is our defender? Grimaldo, right? Grimaldo on the weekend. For Leverkusen, we do have Phil Foden, obviously the man on fire, outshining some of the biggest names in football on the Man City stage. Galeno and Havertz round out our forward and flex position, having exceptional games this weekend and two big blowouts, unfortunately, to Jay's demise and sadness. But it was a great weekend of football. We did have the Champions League second leg play today, so we already know who's some of the clubs that are through. We'll have another set coming out at time of posting. We'll have another games rounding up, and then we'll be talking about the Europa League as well. So make sure you come back and check out this photo. Yeah, it's going to be a busy Thursday. It's going to be exciting. We're going to see how it goes down. So come back and check us out either Friday or Saturday afternoon when we'll be posting that video. Keep up with us on social media and keep on being Son of a Pitch.